We welcome you to college football on ESPN, presented by PlayStation View. From Memorial Stadium in Lawrence, Kansas, the #4 team in the country, Oklahoma, looking to get one step closer to a Big 12 title and a college football playoff spot, taking on the Kansas Jayhawks. Oklahoma, the only team in the top 6 yet to play today. Miami coming back from a 28-14 deficit to beat Virginia, Clemson, Alabama, Auburn, all winners, and Wisconsin about to knock off Michigan. And hi, everybody, with Greg McElroy. I'm Dave Pasch. Tom Luganbill will join us in a minute. Well, Baker Mayfield, he's been the best player in college football, Greg, in 2017. Yes, he does it with flair. He does it with style, but he also does it with substance. His numbers are incredible. You look at what Baker Mayfield has done this year, a guy that has finished in the top 4 in the Heisman Trophy voting the last 2 years, leading the country this year in completion percentage. And nobody throws it better or more often down the field. This is going to be an FBS record if it holds up in passing yards per completion. He's never lost a true road game. 62 pass plays of 20 yards or more. That leads the country. Greg, I know you voted for him a couple years ago to win the Heisman. Yeah. He's likely going to win it this year, barring a miracle. What's been the biggest difference in his game this year?
Well, I loved him a few years ago. Like you said, I voted for him #1 in 2015, the year that Derrick Henry won it. But if you look at the progression from an arm strength standpoint and the way he's improved with ball placement, it's off the charts. Here he is against Oklahoma State. Now, he can't even get all of his weight behind this throw because there's a rusher coming in his face. And there it is, 55 yards in the air. And how about last week, the ball placement against TCU in the back of the end zone, high, where only Carcaterra can get that ball. Beautiful throw by Baker Mayfield, and he's done it over and over again over the course of the 2017 season. He's electric, but Tom Luganbill, he doesn't have to do it alone. They have a deep stable of running backs at their disposal.
Oh, they really do, Greg. You know, this is an area that just provides great balance. And I think a lot of people coming into the season felt like this might take a drop a little bit with the loss of Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine. But the true freshman Trey Sermon has emerged. Rodney Anderson, 4 straight games of 100 yards, 4 touchdowns a week ago. Abdul Adams, and maybe the X factor. The lineup everywhere, do-it-all, jack-of-all trades back. Dimitri Flowers, he's as important to this offense as anybody.
And Tom, if Oklahoma wins today, it will clinch a spot in the Big 12 title game in Dallas. Kickoff from Kansas is next.
ESPN College Football, brought to you by Allstate, official protector of college football fans.
Well, it's no secret that Baker Mayfield has not made a lot of friends this year in college football. And this is pregame just moments ago. Look at this. He goes to shake the other captain's hands with Kansas. Baker says, "You don't want to shake my hand? That's fine. I'll take it out on you guys here in a minute." And then goes to fire up the rest of his teammates.
Just make that chip on Baker Mayfield's shoulder just a little bit bigger. I can't say I encourage that behavior.
Trying to become the first former walk-on ever to win a Heisman Trophy. And Oklahoma will start on the 25-yard line.
I give you Baker Mayfield.
No doubt he's a character, whether it's at talent shows or on the field, but this kid can play too, and he's catching the eye of a lot of NFL scouts. Planting the flag in New York City for the Heisman Trophy, barring something unforeseen, and potentially a first-round draft choice based on what he's done here in 2017. Started out at Texas Tech, was a walk-on there, transferred to Oklahoma, walked on with the Sooners, has thrown 31 touchdowns this year, #3 in college football. He's also run for 5 more. He's going to hand it off, though, to Rodney Anderson on first down. And Anderson out to the 30-yard line, picking up 5. Anderson had a big week in Oklahoma's win a week ago. Big 12 Player of the Week. First player in 20 years in FBS to have 139 yards more rushing and receiving in the same game.
He's a stud.
Only photographers can be up to the light.
And Mayfield's first pass is tipped, and it is incomplete. Should have been picked off. Kyle Mayberry had a chance to get it on the redirection off the hand of Mark Andrews.
Almost a very unfortunate start for Baker Mayfield. Now it's windy here in Lawrence. Gusts up to 35 miles an hour. So it will be interesting to see the ball flight right there out of Baker Mayfield's hand. A little wobbly, a little high, almost a huge play for the Jayhawk defense.
There's the win you talked about. And if you're 1-9 and 0-7 in the Big 12, I don't think it needs to be stated that you got to make that kind of play to beat a team like Oklahoma. Here's 3rd and 5. Mayfield over the middle, and Lamb stood up at the line to gain. Big hit by Tornado, and we'll see if he got enough to move the chains. It looks like the true freshman CeeDee Lamb did. Is a first down.
Greg and Dave, you mentioned the wind. It is really humming out here. Pre-game warm-up with quarterbacks for both teams having a hard time with accuracy. The ball sails whether you like it or not. So definitely something to keep an eye on throughout this entire contest here, because it is humming down here in major gusts.
And right now, with the way the wind is moving, he's thrown right into that wind. Another handoff. Anderson. Good run of about 8 yards out to the 43.
And Anderson was a guy that you weren't sure what his role was going to be. Had injuries his first 2 years on campus. You think he's going to be a really good back, but man, has he surprised some people over the last month.
He'll get it again on 2nd and short, and he has the first down into Kansas territory. You mentioned the injuries, Greg. It was a broken leg suffered at Tennessee early in the 2015 season, then a broken bone in his neck in camp in 2016.
And he's been such a bright spot. He hasn't had to do it alone, like Tom alluded to in the open. Sermon, the freshman, Abdul Adams. This is a very deep, talented stable of running backs, especially given the departures off of last year's team. You thought that might be a weakness? No, sir. This group is very capable.
Play action for Mayfield, and everybody covered downfield. Mayfield, as a flag goes down, throws it out of bounds.
There is a flag on the play.
Flag was thrown at the 40-yard line downfield.
There are fouls by both teams. Holding, number 47, defense. Holding, number 75, offense. Those fouls will offset. Replay, first down.
It was Keith Loneker and Drew Samia of Kansas and Oklahoma respectively on the penalties, but offsetting fouls, so it's another 1st and 10.
Sounds good.
Oklahoma 9-1, the lone loss coming. And Norman against Iowa State. They won in Columbus against Ohio State, beat Oklahoma State, and then last week drilled TCU. To get into the top 4 for the first time in 2 years. Anderson running right, and he gets maybe 3 pushing the pile. They blew it dead at the 44. Take a look at today's Impact Players, brought to you by Jared, the Galleria of Jewelry.
The aforementioned Rodney Anderson, what a star he's been at running back. But on the outside, Brown for the Sooners has been so electric, so fast. And defensively for the Jayhawks, Joe Deneen Jr. and Dorrance Armstrong Jr., both in the front 7, going to be very important from a tackling standpoint and applying pressure to Baker Mayfield in the backfield.
Yeah, Armstrong, he was the Big 12 preseason Defensive Player of the Year. Statistically, he hasn't had as good of a season as he did last year. 8 tackles for a loss. A year ago, he had 20. Mayfield on a wide receiver screen and a great open field stop. Brown is knocked down by Shaq Richmond. So it's a big 3rd down here early on for Oklahoma. 3rd down and 6.
They've gone to the screen game a couple times already, knowing that that wind could play a factor on some of the downfield throws. They're going to have to be more methodical here in a 3rd and 7. Not usually a tough spot for Oklahoma's offense, but given the conditions and the wind blowing, it's very difficult to be accurate and consistent under these circumstances.
Mayfield with time, and Andrews comes free. A penalty marker is thrown right at Andrews and Loneker. Loneker already called for holding once. I think Andrews may have pushed off to get open.
I think they're going to get offensive pass interference on Andrews.
Pass interference, number 81, offense, 15-yard penalty from the previous spot, replay, third down.
And you can see Andrews trying to get to the sticks, understanding the down and distance. You see him work into the defender, and you see that left arm extend, giving him the needed room and the needed space to make the catch. The official did a good job of recognizing that. If you're trying to push off and trying to get a little separation, you got to keep those arms down around your waist. Andrews, his arm got extended and it was up high. Very clear for the back judge to make the call.
So now it's third down and 22 back at the Oklahoma 40-yard line. It was raining earlier today and an overcast, but now the sun comes out here late afternoon in Lawrence. And Oklahoma just going to keep it on the ground on third down and 22. And Anderson grabbed by Loneker at the 49-yard line. And so Oklahoma will have to punt the football.
Tell you, Greg, if you're Kansas, you are really pleased with how that started. You don't give up an explosive play. You don't give up big runs and get pushed around with your front. You get aided by a penalty. Can't ask for anything more as far as starting off this game.
That's important for Kansas to get off to a fast start and to develop some confidence. That defensive stand is the way to do it.
Steve Sims is deep for the Seibert punt. Seibert handles all the kicking duties for Oklahoma. Punting into the wind, and that ball gets held up. That's a terrific kick. And so Kansas will have to start inside its 10-yard line. 44-yard punt, no return. Baker Mayfield unable to move the team on that opening drive, but always making headlines, not making friends though. They've been playing this one since 1929, long before Greg McElroy was born in Los Angeles. SC and UCLA tonight, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on ABC. This is one of your introductions to college football, right?
It was, yeah. Had a buddy from my hometown that played for UCLA. Gabe Creeshon. One of my first experiences was in the Coliseum between UCLA and the Trojans, so that'll be a fun one tonight.
So Kansas starting on the 8-yard line, and they're going to run Herbert on first down, trying to cut it back. And he's stacked up. No gain on the play. So the quarterback for Kansas, he's from Vero Beach High School in Florida. He's 6'2", 200-pound sophomore. It's his 4th straight start. And his first start against Kansas State, he threw for over 400 yards. They think he can run a little bit, and that's the reason he's in there instead of Peyton Bender, who started the first 7 games of the season for KU. Herbert again off the left side. He gets smoked by DJ Ward and Marquez Overton. So 3rd and long.
Carter Stanley doesn't have a huge arm, so it'll be interesting to see whether or not this wind affects him today. But he is athletic. That offensive line for Kansas has been a little leaky, so that athleticism with him has really allowed this offense to be a little better the last few weeks.
Stanley threw for 3 touchdowns last week, taking a shot downfield, and it is incomplete. Almost pulled in by Chase Harrell. Looked like a pretty good throw. Harrell just couldn't pull it down.
It's a very good throw. He got one-on-one. An opportunity on the outside to go against the freshman Norwood. Harrell's a big target at 6'4", giving up 5 inches to Norwood, who was covering. Just unable to bring it down. You got to make big plays like that when you're playing against a top 5 team.
Cole Moose, the punter, got a little wind at his back. C.D. Lamb on the 37-yard line. Lamb able to break a tackle. And now, look out here. He's got speed, and he's able to get outside. Finally dragged down at the 41-yard line. A 21-yard return after a 52-yard punt. Heisman favorite Baker Mayfield back on the field when we return. No score early on in Lawrence.
84.
ESPN College Football is presented by PlayStation Vue. Watch the biggest moments in sports. Try it free today. And in part by Mitsubishi Motors, a century of innovation.
Well, 13 seniors were honored today on Senior Day in Lawrence, but unfortunately only 12 could be here. Andre Maloney, who was recruited by Kansas, signed to play here, passed away in high school. Joe Deneen wears number 29 in honor of Maloney, whose mother and sister were here attending a KU football game for the first time. Deneen was a high school rival of Maloney and wanted to carry on his memory. First down for Oklahoma at the Kansas 41. Here's Anderson. Tripped up, but after an excellent run down to the 33. And there's the Maloney family again in attendance for the first time today, even though they're all from Lawrence.
Just a heartbreaking story, but a touching tribute before the game.
Anderson again on second and short, and he will be close to the first down. Armstrong tackles him shy of the marker, so it'll be 3rd down and 1 here for Oklahoma, which leads the country in just about every offensive category coming into this game.
And this is 4-down territory too. Although they're right there on the edge of field goals, I think that this, knowing the wind and the conditions, they know they have 2 downs to potentially get it.
There's Lincoln Riley, the head coach and the play caller. He was the offensive coordinator last year. And Anderson not going to get it. Great stop. Daniel Wise up front, who's been very good at nose guard this year for Kansas, makes the tackle. So it's 4th down. You said 4-down territory, but they lose a yard and a half. You get 4th and 3. Let's see what Lincoln Riley dials up here.
I think you got to go, fellas, with this wind and the way that's going to affect that ball. It's a long kick anyways. Got to have confidence you're going to be able to get this with what you've been able to produce on the season on the offense.
There's no doubt they're going. It's just about whether or not Baker Mayfield can hit one of his receivers accurately in stride.
Almost threw an interception on the last drive because of an errant throw. He'll pass here. Off the pump fake. Rolling out. Gets hit. Now he throws it over the middle. It's caught by Anderson inside the 10. And Anderson knocked out a play. Did he get in? He did. Touchdown, Oklahoma. And that's why Baker Mayfield's going to win the Heisman.
What an incredible play by Baker Mayfield. Nothing there initially. Buys time. Creates. Gets outside the pocket. Allows his receivers to uncover. And still keeps his eyes downfield while evading would-be tacklers. I mean, that is so hard to cover these talented guys on the outside and on the perimeter for that long. Baker Mayfield, that's why he's the best player in college football right there.
Hey, Greg, he made the biggest no-no look safe.
Yeah, you never throw late across the middle. You're told that your whole life as you're coming up, but Baker Mayfield does so again. Of course, they're going to take a look at it. Every scoring play is reviewed.
Yeah, the question is, did that right foot touch out of bounds before the ball crossed the plane?
Correct. You see that right foot. It's difficult to tell simultaneously where the ball is when that right foot hits down out of bounds. Of course, it has to be indisputable video evidence to overturn. There's a good look. And you can see, I mean, the nose of the football is awfully close there to the goal line as that right foot hits down out of bounds.
When you watch that last play by Baker Mayfield, there's 2 guys that come to mind that we see do that all the time. Well, we used to see Johnny Manziel.
Right.
We still see Russell Wilson do it
all the time. And Drew Brees, too, in a lot of ways. Just being able to create and allow guys to uncover and buy time. Whether this is a touchdown or it's going to be 1st and goal at the 1. That play right there really encapsulates everything that Baker Mayfield can do for you.
I tell you, guys, you don't have to be dynamic either. You know, you don't have to be Lamar Jackson. You don't have to be RG3. You just got to have enough athleticism and moxie and presence to navigate the pocket and buy a second chance.
Oh, he's got moxie. That's never lacking with Baker Mayfield. It would be, by the way, if this holds, 37th straight game with a touchdown pass.
Rolling on the field stands, touchdown.
So that is a new Big 12 record, 37 consecutive games with a touchdown pass. That's his 32nd touchdown pass this season. Came on 4th and 3.
Big plays. Baker Mayfield, every game. You put on the tape and you say, okay, when is he going to make a big play? It's usually going to be 2 a quarter. And it's really amazing. Like clockwork. Every single week, you can expect him to do something miraculous. That right there on 4th down was pretty dang close to miraculous.
34-yard touchdown pass to Anderson. And the point after makes it 7-0 OU. Baker Mayfield says to the Kansas players, "You won't shake my hand? I'll show you what I'll do to you." The ESPN app is a fan's best friend. You can stream every ESPN and ABC college football game live at home or on the go. Get access to scores, news, highlights. Everything's on the ESPN app. Start streaming now. Go to the app and check out what happened right before kickoff when the captains were meeting in midfield and Baker Mayfield stretched out his hand to shake hands with the Kansas players. They had their hands purposely behind their backs. As if he needed any more motivation. And Kansas just jumps on the ball at the 31-yard line as we go to Adnan in the studio.
All right, Dave, thank you very much. Just want to update you over on ABC. It's Illinois and Ohio State already up 7-0 after a Mike Weber touchdown. And this is J.T. Barrett here scampering in himself. 14-0 right now for the Buckeyes leading Illinois. Dave?
All right, Adnan. Baker's reaction very similar to what Adnan does when Palmer and Galloway refuse to shake his hand prior to showtime.
Just clapping right there. Adnan has every bit as much swag as Baker does, though. No doubt about it.
He does. So first down for Oklahoma, or Kansas rather, on its 31-yard line after the Oklahoma touchdown on 4th down. Stanley's pass caught at the 35-yard line by Evan Fairs. Gain of 5. Well, this is where Oklahoma has struggled this season on the defensive end. They've allowed 7 straight games of 20 or more points. That's the longest active streak by a ranked team.
Yeah, they have struggled. There's been moments where they have really had a tough time getting off the field, but relying on some young people and some fresh faces.
Here's Fairs again in the flat. And a gain of maybe 3 to the 39. It'll be 3rd down.
They have talent. Now, they don't have experience at several different positions, particularly in the secondary. But I do think that this group, from a situational standpoint, in the red zone and on 3rd down, there's room for improvement, but that's where they have to be good in this league. You're going to give up yards, you're going to give up big plays, but you have to do a good job when teams get close to the end zone, and you have to do a great job getting off the field on 3rd down.
And it's 3rd down and 3. Or a long 2 for Kansas. And they're going to keep it on the ground here. And close to the first down is Taylor Martin. He's going to be spotted short. It's 4th down. See what David Beatty, the head coach, elects to do here. Knowing you're playing a top 5 team, do you roll the dice this early in the game? 4th down? Nope, you punt it away.
You have to. And I think, look, I understand you're going to have to take some chances. You're going to have to make some plays in order to make sure that you're in this game. But you can't put yourself in a position where Oklahoma gets the ball again on your side of the 50-yard line. After the nice punt return last time, Oklahoma only had to go a short field. Can't do it 2 drives in a row.
And the fair catch signal made, a sliding grab by Lamb, and Oklahoma will start at the 16-yard line, leading 7-0 in the first quarter.
Watch me do this.
Shake his hand. He says, all right, just make that chip on my shoulder a little bit bigger. Gets the troops fired up and goes onto the field. And on 4th down, throws a touchdown pass. The many faces of many personalities, if you will, of Baker Mayfield.
I like the frames on the left. It's a stylish look.
This is certainly refreshing for college football fans, but for the head coach Lincoln Riley, is this dangerous? Any part of Baker Mayfield in terms of his personality and the highs and the lows. Off play action, Mayfield throws it to the sideline, incomplete. Let's go to Adnan.
All right, Dave, thank you very much. Updating you right now on Oklahoma State. This is a familiar duo, Mason Rudolph to James Washington. It's over on ESPN 2, all tied up. And you're right, Jesse and Joey sometimes do not shake my hand. Dave?
Second and 10 for Mayfield on the 16-yard line. You see that wind in the face of Oklahoma. So Sermon running right, and he's going to get tackled for a loss at the 14. Greg, before we had to go to Adnan, I mentioned, you know, if you're a head coach and you're trying to win a championship, how much do you embrace Baker Mayfield's personality? How much of it, trying to win a title in the playoff era, is it a concern?
Oh, no, it's the best thing that's ever happened to Oklahoma over the last few years. I mean, he has just breathed so much energy into the program, and there's so much consistency from him at the quarterback position. He's as stable as he's ever been, and I think you got to have a guy like that if you want to win a championship.
See what Mayfield does here on 3rd down and 12. Again, with a wind in his face, you see some debris blowing onto the field. Mayfield from the 5, moving around in the pocket, now takes off and gets sacked at the 13-yard line by Dorrance Armstrong to force a punt, which will occur from the Oklahoma goal line into the wind.
And that's a great job by the Kansas defense. Your offense gets stopped short on 3rd and short. Your coach decides to punt it, play the field position game. You go right out, you get a 3 and out. Tremendous job by the Jayhawk defense.
So Seibert will boot it away here on 4th down. Had to move a little bit to his left, and the ball gets caught up in the wind, and it checks up, and Kansas is going to start inside the Oklahoma 40-yard line. Only a 25-yard punt by Seibert. Can the Jayhawks pay it off now and get some points? Taco Bell, a proud partner of the College Football Playoff. Be on the lookout for Taco Bell student sections and passionate fans like these at games all season long. Well, they haven't had a ton to cheer about here in Lawrence this season. 3rd straight 10-loss season. If they fall today, that would be the longest a Power 5 school in terms of active streaks. But a chance here for Kansas, starting inside the 40-yard line, to make something happen. Stanley off play action, long throw, and the catch is made for a 1st down to the 26-yard line by tight end Ben Johnson.
And this is what Kansas has to do offensively. They got to move the pocket. They got to make these pass rushers for Oklahoma adjust their angles. If you just drop Stanley back over and over and over again, Okoronkwo and Kelly, they can go right after Stanley. Because this offensive line has struggled, you got to help them out. You got to make these defenders guess. So moving Stanley around, getting him outside the pocket, using play action, that's what Doug Meacham, the offensive coordinator, is trying to do today.
1st down inside the 30-yard line of Oklahoma. Stanley to the other side, juggled and caught. Harrell on the grab, taken down by Trey Norwood. Gain of 5 yards.
I'll tell you, quarter run out so that they can get the field position flipped and get this wind at their back.
It's swirling for sure. I know it's going in one direction, then the other again. So you just got to take advantage of field position under these circumstances, and that's exactly what Kansas has done on the first 2 plays of this drive.
On 2nd and 5, a strike to Harrell again. We'll see where they spot the ball. Norwood was right there on the tackle, and it's going to be a 1st down. Carter Stanley has looked good so far in this game. A lot of accurate throws, including on a deep ball where Should have been a catch on the last drop.
And this is not an area of the field that Kansas has really struggled with. Now, when you're playing against a team that's as high octane offensively as Oklahoma, you have to score touchdowns when you get in the red zone. Field goals aren't going to beat the Sooners with the way they can put up points on the other side.
Tom mentioned trying to score before you have to change ends at the quarter. They run the ball here, and they're not going to get anything. Herbert knocked down in the backfield. Forward progress may get him back to the original line of scrimmage. The true freshman Kenneth Murray, one of those 4 true freshmen starting on defense for Oklahoma right now.
And Dave, he is a great looking player. 2 years from now, there are going to be a lot of awards watch lists with his name on it. He's going to be special. This is just a team that's talented, just not overly experienced. But hey, go with youth movement if you've got better players.
Second and long. Wide receiver screen to Johnson. And he's to the 11, so a 5-yard pickup. About a 10-second difference between the game and play clocks here at 3rd down and 6.
Those screens have to be big for Kansas today. Already talked about that pass rush and the capabilities up front for Oklahoma. Keeping them off balance with screens and draws can also be very beneficial to the OC Doug Meacham. Let's see what he dials up here on a 3rd and 6 in the red zone.
Stanley to the air with time. End zone throw is high. The flag comes in. Chase Harrell, the intended receiver. You wonder, was that a catchable ball? And that's what Lincoln Riley is asking. Norwood and Johnson in coverage, but I thought that was way over the head of everybody. I don't know. Clearly it was interference, and they may say he didn't get a chance to jump because he was being grabbed by Norwood, and therefore you can't say it's uncatchable.
Pass interference, number 13, defense. That foul occurred in the end zone. By rule, the ball will be placed at the 2-yard line. Automatic, first down.
I think they got it right, Mac.
That's a good job by the officials. You look at the wide receiver, you look at how big he is. He's 6'4", Harrell is. And he showed a credit card inch vertical there because a defender was draped all over him. I think if he was not impeded, he could have had a chance to go up and make that play.
They got Taylor Martin in to take the direct snap here, and it goes over his head. Martin in trouble. And that's Kansas football in a nutshell right there. There are penalty markers down.
Yeah, and guys, they're going to get an illegal formation on top of it here with the receivers to the bottom of your screen. They did not have a target aligned on the line of scrimmage.
Which they'll just decline. I mean, you had 1st and goal on the 2. You try to get tricky, and you snap it over the Wildcat quarterback's head, and you lose 13, 14 yards.
Illegal formation, more than 4 men in the backfield. Offense, that penalty is declined. 2nd down.
But if it's a false start, it's a dead ball foul. But because that occurred during the play, Oklahoma is just going to decline that. And now you're in 2nd and goal. And now you got to go into the wind here because we're changing ends for the 2nd quarter. Some plays were there to be made, though, for the Jayhawks in the 1st quarter. They couldn't get it done. Meanwhile, Baker Mayfield made all the plays, including the touchdown pass to Anderson, the only score of the game so far in Lawrence.
Welcome back to Lawrence. An interesting play to end the 1st quarter. Mesa Riberty, he's the center. They're in a Wildcat position. He has Marquez Overton, 300 pounds, right on top of him. And as he's trying to snap the football, he tries to block before he executes the snap, which leads the snap to go off target. The coaches were concerned about the defenders lining up right over the center. Right there, you could see it clearly affected the center, Riberty, and the accuracy on the shotgun snap.
And it caused a 10-yard loss, so it's 2nd and goal as we start the 2nd quarter. And here's Stanley running the ball, and he gets a good chunk of it back down to the 5.
Number 9, Carter Stanley.
That's one of the reasons he's in there at quarterback instead of Peyton Bender, who was the starting QB for the first 2 months of the season.
They had some success with that quarterback draw last week against Texas, too. When they're off schedule, for instance, 2nd and long, like we just saw, That quarterback draw has been beneficial to them. Now it's a little bit more manageable 3rd and goal.
From the 6-yard line to the end zone. Incomplete. Harrell had a chance. Nice play by true freshman Trey Norwood to break it up, and it's 4th and goal.
It's good coverage on the outside, trying to work Harrell on the fade route. He's got both hands on the ball. That's twice now that Harrell has had both hands on the football, only for the ball to end up incomplete. Now, is that a contested catch? Yes. Is it very difficult? Absolutely. But those are the plays you have to make if you're trying to upset a top 5 team.
Rui's kick is good, and Kansas is on the board. But as we said, going to break in the 1st quarter, there's some plays to be made out there for KU.
Studios updating you on Penn State and Nebraska. Saquon Barkley in his last 3 games hasn't rushed for more than 63 yards. On his first touch, 65 yards to the house. 7-3 Penn State. That's getting it going, Dave Pasch.
And then so many people in early October said, oh, Saquon Barkley, he's the Heisman winner. Just go ahead and vote now. Now everybody's saying it's Baker Mayfield. Vote now. Will it change?
We're not a very reactionary society, are we? We don't overreact. No, not us.
Short kick, and because it gets caught up in the wind, it goes out of bounds, and they're going to have the ball on the 35-yard line. So Lincoln Riley is the head coach at Oklahoma. His younger brother is the quarterback coach at Kansas. And at one time, Garrett played at Texas Tech. Lincoln was a coach at Texas Tech. They actually worked together at East Carolina on the coaching staff. And here they were in pregame.
Special. I know Lincoln's a few years older than his brother Garrett, which is amazing because Lincoln's only a few years older than his players. But
true.
Clearly, 2 guys that have tremendous football minds. Lincoln Riley, one of the bright young stars in college football, and has been for a number of years. What he's done, obviously, since taking over as the play caller a few years ago in Norman has been off the charts. And his brother definitely has his work cut out a little bit for him here at Kansas, but is very well respected by his colleagues.
He's 28, Garrett. Lincoln is 34, the youngest head coach in FBS. Rodney Anderson running left, and a good defensive play, only a 1-yard gain. Bryce Tornado on the tackle. I had a chance to talk with Lincoln and Garrett's dad, Mike Riley. No, not that Mike Riley. This week on the phone, and Mike said that he and his wife Marilyn were not going to be in attendance today. They have Thanksgiving plans in Texas, where the Riley family is from, but also it's a lot easier to be neutral when you're home. And he said, look, that handshake we showed you, that's a moment that they think about all week long, just kind of getting it over with and then playing the game. Play action, Mayfield running here. And he will not get to the line to gain, come up about a yard shy, 3rd down.
I'll tell you what, Greg, Dave, aside from the touchdown pass, which was a tremendous play by Baker Mayfield, and that run right there, Oklahoma has done nothing offensively in this football game that reflects any resemblance of what we've seen from them coming into this matchup. So to this point, you got to give this Kansas defense an awful lot of credit.
No doubt. They've been very good, Tom, and have tackled well in space and have held up quite well, obviously, against the run, which is going to be very important today, given the tough conditions to throw the football.
Anderson's already had 9 carries on the day. Not going to get number 10. Mayfield down the field. It's over the head of Andrews, incomplete. 4th down and a yard. The offense is on the field. Let's see if they stay on the field.
You're going to have to force Baker Mayfield off the field, but Lincoln Riley is going to call for his punt unit to come out. Good job by Kansas defensively, but that's a throw that Baker Mayfield will make 99 times out of 100. Throwing the corner route, just threw it behind Andrews. That's one he definitely is going to wish he had back.
Seibert with the wind at his back, and he kicks it too far. Into the end zone on the fly. 56-yard punt, but only a 36-yard net. And Kansas down 4. Back in offense when we return.
ESPN College Football, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing, and AT&T.
Long list of Oklahoma legends to win the Heisman Trophy, including Sam Bradford in 2008, the most recent winner. 9 seasons later, Baker Mayfield, the obvious #1 candidate to win the award. But what surprises me, are you with me on this? Why is Jonathan Taylor all the way down at the end?
He shouldn't be. Anybody that's watched, I think, should have Lamar Jackson and Jonathan Taylor in mind. Now, it's Baker Mayfield's trophy. You might as well etch his name on it right now. But Jonathan Taylor, given the effort that he had today against Michigan as well, that should vault him up. I think people are just conditioned to look at Wisconsin running backs and say, oh, well, just another guy, a long list of guys that have come before him that have been equally productive. But if you watch Wisconsin closely, you'll recognize that they are a totally different team. When Taylor's out there, he's a star and should definitely be in New York as one of the finalists.
Not that those other young men haven't had great seasons, but Taylor on an undefeated team as a true freshman, doing what not many Wisconsin backs before him have been able to do. Good pickup. Harold close to the first down at the 30-yard line as we go to Adnan Virk in the studio.
All right, Dave, thank you very much. Let's see, Dr. Pepper Championship Drive update. Kentucky and Georgia. This is Nick Chubb. 8-yard touchdown, 7-6 right now for the Bulldogs through 1 quarter play. Dave?
Georgia trying to bounce back after getting destroyed by Auburn last week. First down throw to Harrell again, and he gets a face full of Chase Sylvie on the tackle. Georgia has Georgia Tech on the road next week, then the SEC championship game. So obviously, if they win out, they're going to be in the college football playoff.
Yeah, Georgia is a really good football team. I think if you look at last week and you want to become a prisoner of the moment, it's easy to say, oh, clearly they're flawed. But if you look at the entire body of work and what they've put together and how consistent they've been, they're going to be a tough out for anybody over the next few weeks.
Yeah, whether it's Auburn or Alabama, you win that game, you beat Georgia Tech on the road, you win that game, you're in the top 4. Long throw, and wonder if the wind kept that from reaching Evan Fairs. It'll bring up 3rd and long.
Well, it did. It's a difficult long throw as it is. And Greg, as you mentioned, Carter Stanley, not the strongest of arms, but throwing into that stiff wind, it just dies. Watch the ball tail off at the end. Just can't get back down the stem to get to that football. I like the design. They're executing well, but this wind's affected Kansas now on offense.
And they've had some opportunities, some drop balls. A snap on 1st and goal from the 2 that sails over the head of the Wildcat quarterback. He had to settle for a field goal. Now 3rd and 8. Stanley dumps the pass off, and Herbert stretching out. They're going to mark him short. They say he stepped out at the 39. It's 4th and 1. Again, does Kansas take a chance? You're in the game. You're only down 4. I don't know that now is the time to risk it.
And take another look at it. You can see him extend. Great effort by Herbert. I think they might take an additional look at that. You could see David Beatty on the sideline frustrated with the ruling.
And now a timeout is called. It didn't get reviewed upstairs, so will Kansas challenge that? They call a timeout, and you would imagine they'll punt the ball. At least we hope they do. Tuesday on ESPN, the college football playoff rankings will be revealed exclusively on ESPN at 7 Eastern. Also, Reese will talk with Kirby Hocutt, the committee chair. You can watch it streaming live on the ESPN app. Oklahoma in the top 4, the first time since Oklahoma was there 2 years ago that the Big 12 has had a team in the top 4. Some thought the Sooners should have been higher than number 4. They do punt it on 4th down and 1. And it takes a couple of good bounces down to about the 26-yard line, so that works out well. A 34-yard punt into the wind by Cole Moose. This week's college football rankings brought to you by Northwestern Mutual. We mentioned Oklahoma's number 4. Miami had a little trouble with Virginia today, down 28-14. No issues for Alabama and Clemson in their games. Auburn a winner as well, and Georgia in a close game right now with Kentucky.
How about that 10 spot, too? Penn State hosting Nebraska, down 3. And Nebraska has been brutal for a majority of this season. It really struggled on both sides of the football. So it hasn't exactly been dominant efforts from the top 10 teams so far.
Rodney Anderson getting the carry here and wrapped up by Dorrance Armstrong. So a gain of maybe 3 on the play. Boy, it's looking more and more the way things are going that a 2-loss team. Now Auburn has to obviously beat Alabama next week. Ohio State or Penn State has to win the Big Ten, and you still have Notre Dame. Play action. Mayfield looking downfield and now lets it fly into double coverage. It's juggled and incomplete, almost pulled in by Marquise Brown.
Man, what a play that would have been. Baker Mayfield stretching out that improved arm that we discussed in the open, hits Brown in stride. Brown actually did a nice job of adjusting to that, moving a little bit to his left, and you can see actually it appears as though it was tipped by Miller, the safety for Kansas, right before it reached Brown's hands. Tremendous job on the defensive play.
Brown might be shaken up too. 3rd and 7 for OU. Mayfield, short throw. Anderson unable to get the first down. Tackled by Tornadin at the 34. It's 4th and 2. And Oklahoma's going to have to punt the football.
And I can't tell you how good a job that is by Kansas. The last couple possessions, they have done such a good job tackling in space, rallying to the football, having tight coverage in the back end on some deep plays.
That's Clint Bowen, the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, deserves some credit for what they've done so far through a quarter and a half.
Seibert again with the wind at his back, gets a hold of that one, and it's muffed. But Kansas able to fall on it. Sims recovers his own whiff at the 16-yard line. Kansas ball when we come back. Only now 4. Tonight at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on ABC, the battle for bragging rights in Los Angeles between SC and UCLA. And 2 quarterbacks that if Sam Darnold comes out, likely to be drafted very high. Darnold of SC, Josh Rosen of UCLA. And we've got a pretty good quarterback in this game. Baker Mayfield has showed off that arm. Something that I don't know if a lot of people realize he's got. He's got tremendous arm strength. And I know the receiver had to catch up to that ball, but that still was a great throw. It should have been caught by Marquise Brown. Instead, it was a drop, and now Kansas takes over on its 16-yard line. Carter Stanley, the quarterback, stands and throws, and it's too high, intended for Steven Sims.
Doug Meacham, the offensive coordinator for Kansas, in his first year here in Lawrence, doesn't have a ridiculous amount of talent, especially along the offensive front. But his quarterback's solid. He's got a couple good running backs and a few good wide receivers, trying to put it all together against a very capable and athletic Oklahoma defense. No easy task today for him.
Play action. Stanley in trouble. And looking for somewhere to run. And instead he gets squashed. Caleb Kelly is there. So 3rd down and long.
Greg, that's when a drop on 1st down, which would have put you at 2nd and 5, really catches up with you after you have a negative play. And now 3rd and a mile.
Not much in Doug Meacham's game plan that's going to lead to a conversion on 3rd and long.
Yeah, and he talked about that with us. You know, listen, you get in 2nd and 12, 3rd and 14. There's just not a lot on the sheet.
Especially when you're having a difficult time holding up, protecting your quarterback.
Short throw. It's deflected and picked off. Intercepted by Emmanuel Beal, and Oklahoma's going to have the football inside the 15-yard line.
Another drop by the Kansas wide receivers. See Stanley trying to get it underneath to Fairs to try to get him out the back door with blockers out in front. Stanley just threw it too hard. I mean, the throw is only 6 or 7 yards, and it was accurate. He threw it 100 miles an hour. It goes through Fair's hands and into the opportunistic belly of Beal. Big play for the Oklahoma defense.
And Kansas now minus 15 turnover ratio on the season. That's a good way to get to 1-9. You can't give Oklahoma easy opportunities to score. I mean, that's really the first big mistake by Kansas, so they muffed the punt. Here's a short pass. It'll go down to Bedett. He's at the 5 and rolled down to about the 3-yard line. Second and short coming up.
Just so hard for your defense, and a sudden change opportunity like this to hold up. Kansas and their defense, for the most part, through the first 22 minutes of the game, they've held on pretty good. But right here, backs against the wall against one of the most explosive offenses in college football, and arguably the game's best player in Baker Mayfield.
He's got Rodney Anderson behind him. Anderson scored on 4th down on a touchdown pass earlier. They're going to get lined up here. Play clock at 1, and it will be Anderson. And good defense again at the line of scrimmage. Joe Dineen, the leading tackler. In fact, he leads all players at FBS in solo stops. The big hit on Anderson to bring up 3rd down.
Great job by Dineen right there, slipping inside the pulling guard on the power play. Now Baker Mayfield in the 3rd down situation. I think you have to try to get him outside the pocket. Give him a run pass option where he can extend the play if need be.
And on the end around, they hand it off to Smallwood. He's into the end zone for his 2nd rushing touchdown of the season.
The little jet sweep to Smallwood. Thought Baker Mayfield might call his own number, see if he can't make a play. Instead, they just hand it right around the perimeter to Smallwood, and he falls forward for a touchdown.
It started with the Beal interception off the deflection by Fairs and ends in a touchdown run by Smallwood. Tack on 1, and it's 14-3 Sooners. Let's go to Adnan.
All right, Dave, thank you. Just checking in on a little Big 12 football. Kansas State, Oklahoma State. Earlier, Skylar Thompson, a 47-yard touchdown to Byron Pringle. And here it's Pringle himself. Look at those moves he's making on the kickoff return. 89 yards all the way to the house. Currently 21-13. It's on ESPN2. And checking in on Saquon Barkley here, down 10-7 against Nebraska, and ties the career Penn State record for touchdowns. 14-10, almost through 1. Dave, back to you and Greg.
All right, Adnan, and you look at the numbers for Baker Mayfield. That was into a stiff win that first quarter. 38 passing yards, the fewest this season in the first quarter. 14-3, though, the Sooners lead, getting the turnover on the short field.
So much of those 51 yards, too, created on a broken play where Baker Mayfield scrambled around and found Rodney Anderson for the game's first score. So he's been held in check by his standards, obviously, throughout the beginning of this game.
They got a holder out there for Seibert because of that wind. Looked like us yesterday at our 2QB segment, which I know everybody's looking forward to seeing later. Touchback, and Kansas will start on the 25-yard line. Time now for our Aflac trivia question. Aflac! Who is the youngest college football head coach to win a national championship? We ask you this question because Lincoln Riley is the youngest coach in FBS at 34 years old. 3rd year on the staff, first as head coach, taking over for Bob Stoops.
Man, this is tough.
You think?
Youngest coach to win a national championship.
I'm going to give you guys a hint.
Okay.
McElroy wasn't alive when it happened.
Well, I'm sure I have a real fair shot at trying to get this one.
Swing pass out of the backfield to Herbert. And pushing forward to the 28, picking up 3 yards. Stephen Parker on the initial hit. All right, let's answer today's Aflac trivia question. A little bit of a trick question. There actually were 4 guys who did it. At age 34, by the way.
Wow.
Paul Brown was the first. Danny Ford at Clemson was the last. And remember, Clemson, that was their last national championship until a year ago.
Very interesting.
I thought Danny Ford was older than that. At that time.
He is now.
Yeah, he is now.
2nd and 8. And here's Herbert running. And it's going to put him in 3rd down at about 5. It's not out of the question that Lincoln Riley will win a national championship at age 34. What's your biggest worry about Oklahoma if you're a Sooner fan?
If they play against an elite defensive line with guys that can play a man-to-man on the back end, that makes life very difficult. And if you can lock down these wide receivers and limit big plays, then it becomes tough. I think their defense, too, a lot of problems in the secondary with their youth and inexperience.
Stanley's pass is caught by Harrell, stretching out for the 1st down. And looks like he's got it based on the spot.
Just barely enough. Understanding the down and distance. Harrell knowing the exact distance he needed to get to convert on that for a fresh set of downs. Well done by the wide receiver, who's had a couple drops already today that have impacted the game.
This is going to get reviewed further, it would seem.
The ruling on the field was that the Kansas player made the line to gain for a 1st down. The previous play is under further review.
Interesting. They review this one, but didn't the other.
Yeah, there was a play earlier when it looked as though Kansas might have had an opportunity to potentially challenge, but they opted not to, ended up punting. Of course, the yellow line is not exact, but it's pretty close. Fully expect this play to stand as called or be confirmed by the official.
And I thought initially on the catch he had it, but I don't think they were going to give him forward progress. And then the question is, where did he step out of bounds? It's really hard to tell conclusively.
The spot right now is about a half-yard past the 35-yard line, so I would expect this call to be confirmed.
After review, the ruling on the field is confirmed. 1st down, Kansas.
And you saw those passing yards for Kansas. They have more through the air than Oklahoma does. Right now the defense has played well for Kansas. It's the turnover. It was the killer. I mean, the interception by Stanley, you mentioned he threw it too hard, but still was right off the hands of a receiver.
Yeah, his receivers haven't helped him out. He's been, for the most part, very accurate early in this game, challenging and testing that young secondary for Oklahoma.
Herbert gets the call straight ahead, got some running room. Push back at the 43, but it's a good run. 8 yards there for Khalil Herbert, with a game earlier this season had almost 300 rushing yards. And now Oklahoma's got an injury, and this would be big. This is one of their best players up front, Marquez Overton. You know, they've had to play without Matt Romar this season, who's been out with an undisclosed injury for the last 7 games. He's a good player on that D line.
You hate to see that, and obviously this time of year your depth is so challenged, especially along the defensive line. So Sooner fans holding their breath right now.
Let's go back to Adnan Virk while we have a moment.
All right, Dave, thank you very much. PlayStation View, multi-view right now. Big 12 matchup on ESPN2. Kansas State has that lead against Oklahoma State, 21-13. And how about the Buckeyes all over Illinois, 31-0. That game's on ABC. Dave, back to you and Greg.
No, not really a surprise there in Columbus, especially now knowing that if Ohio State wins out, they've got a real chance to make the college football playoff as a 2-loss team. One of their losses, obviously, at home against Oklahoma.
What a dominant performance that was, too, by Oklahoma. You've seen Ohio State. They've been a little Jekyll and Hyde this year, where they've had performances that leave you scratching your head, like against Iowa and against Oklahoma. then you have other performances like the last 2 weeks, especially against Michigan State, in which they were absolutely dominant. Even if you want to just cut games up, you look at the fourth quarter against Penn State, unbelievable. First 3 quarters, somewhat average. That team's kind of tough to figure out.
2nd and 3 for Kansas. Herbert again has the first down. Right now, Kansas making it look pretty easy running the ball against Oklahoma.
Herbert's a good back. He looks the part, well put together. Not the tallest guy in the world. He's just a hair over 5'9". But he has some explosive capabilities, and if he gets in the open field, he can make you miss. Didn't have his best stuff last week against Texas, really struggled to get anything going, but today haven't been many opportunities, but trying to cash in here in the second quarter.
Yeah, the last 2 plays for Kansas after they struggled to run the ball in Oklahoma in the first quarter, but also the rushing yards skewed by the sack. Herbert again finds running room down to the 45-yard line. Good drive by the Jayhawks right now.
Really good drive, and you can see Stanley, they're just reading number 72, Amani Bledsoe, on a little zone read. He goes too far upfield. They hand it to Herbert for a nice gain.
And then movement before the snap as Devontae Lumpkin was lined up over the center. See if he was drawn off.
There it is, Greg. That's exactly what occurred down here in the red zone with that nose tackle lining up over the center.
Now trying to mix up the snap count to make sure those guys can't jump the snap.
Offside, number 57, defense. 5-yard penalty will result in a first down.
You think Lumpkin was a little excited? I mean, all Riberty did was just turn his body back to the quarterback.
I mean, right over the center, you can see it clear as day. Riberty just trying to communicate. Hear what Stanley's having to say. Lampkin was ready to roll. Big fella. When you get that 340-pound body moving, it's hard to stop him.
Lampkin, a sophomore from Houston, Texas. So fresh set of downs here for Kansas after the offside. They got 2 timeouts. We're inside 4 minutes to go in the half. Stanley going to hit Harrell again out in space. No running room, so he goes behind the line and finally knocked down to the 48-yard line. Now, negative plays, mistakes by Kansas. Again,
take 2 steps forward and 1 gigantic step back. Harrell's got to understand just to cut your losses. Okoronkwo did a great job breaking up that bunch formation. Didn't allow much running room. Just go down. 2nd and 11's okay. 2nd and 17, not so much.
Stanley fakes the run. Now looking downfield. Incomplete. Another drop ball. Harrell couldn't hang on. Carter Stanley has thrown some really good footballs, but he is getting 0 help whatsoever.
And this was a well-thrown football and well defended too. And it was a good job by Norwood trying to collapse on the post down the middle. For a second, Harrell was running wide open, and that hole closed quickly. And that arm going over the top might have distracted Harrell and caused the incompletion.
As Tom mentioned earlier, I don't know what Doug Meacham has in the book for 3rd and 17. There's not much, but whatever they just did on the last play, do it again except catch the ball. They'll keep it on the ground, though. Dom Williams, a true freshman, with a 44-yard line. That may just flip the field and help out the punter a little bit.
You can see Stanley is walking off the field with a little bit of a limp. Not running off full speed. Little ginger as he goes to the sideline, has a chat with his offensive coordinator, Doug Meacham.
Oklahoma called a timeout to preserve a little time, so 2:47 on the clock. And the punt coming up. Well, Baker Mayfield so far 5 of 9 passing and a touchdown. The Annex started in pregame going to shake the hands of a Kansas captain, and he was denied. There you even see Armstrong. Every time Mayfield approaches a Kansas player, they put their hands behind their back. And Mayfield talking trash after the touchdown pass on 4th down. He looks back at the Kansas fans. I think he said, you have one win, stick to basketball.
Wow.
In fact, one of our camera operators heard him say, stick to basketball. He's not wrong with that comment about the one win. Good punt. And it's downed at the 3-yard line. Let's go to Adnan Burke in the studio.
All right, Dave, thank you very much. Coming up on the Lexus halftime report, Jesse Palmer, Joey Galloway, and me. Bulldogs trying to bounce back after Georgia's loss against Auburn. They're facing Kentucky today. Also, the story of unbeaten's Wisconsin trying to stay unbeaten as they were facing Michigan. And we'll also tell you what's happening in the Big 12 in Kansas State, Oklahoma State. By the way, I love being on Greg's radio show, Dave. I'd never tell him just to stick to radio.
A face for radio and a voice for print is what they always say in this industry. And I think I can check both those boxes.
By the way, thanks for having me on. It's the first time you've had me on all year. We get to late November. And we get a game again with a 1-9 team involved as you get me on the show.
I've finally endeared myself to you, and you were nice enough to come by.
Those are early wake-up calls. Here's Rodney Anderson running the ball. It gives him a little more breathing room to the 8-yard line. I asked you this earlier, so let me go back to it. When you're Lincoln Riley and you have your quarterback turning around during game action, standing on the sideline and shouting stuff to Kansas fans, some of the antics on the field, talking trash to players, does it bother you at all, or do you just embrace it because that's who he is?
That's who he is, and it makes him better. It fires him up. I mean, he uses it as much for his own motivation as it is anything else.
Mayfield with a ton of time. Now throws high. Another drop ball. Should have been picked off by Tyrone Miller. My goodness. I mean, how many chances are you going to get if you're Kansas to make something happen?
They have had so many opportunities in this first half to make a play. Probably 5 or 6 opportunities, to be frank.
Look at this here, Greg. A little pushing and shoving afterwards involving linemen. You have Orlando Brown, All-America left tackle in there, and a penalty marker is down.
After the play was over, unsportsmanlike conduct, number 58, offense. Half the distance to the goal. The down counts. 3rd down. That's number 58's first unsportsmanlike conduct foul for the game.
It's on their center, Eric Wren.
You got to keep your composure. Kansas is coming into this game, understandably so. 1 win on the season. Have nothing to lose. Try to get under the skin of the number 4 ranked Oklahoma Sooners. And they succeeded right there. You got to keep your composure. If you're Wren, you're a 5th-year senior, played a lot of football. You can't make mistakes like that. Even though it doesn't result in a lot of lost yardage, which is not what you want to see from one of your leaders. You can see bottom of the pile. You see him put his hands on the defender and pushing his head down into the ground.
Made it an easy call for the official there. Not smart at all by Eric Wren. That's 3rd and 9. And Mayfield standing in his end zone. Mayfield looking. Everybody covered. Now Mayfield overthrows the receiver. Incomplete, trying to hit CeeDee Lamb. And so the Sooners will have to punt from their end zone, and Kansas does have a pair of timeouts. As many missed opportunities as there have been for the Jayhawks here in the first half, they have a chance to get some points here and make it a 1-score game going into the locker room.
Yeah, they do. And if I'm Kansas, knowing that the wind is at the back of the Oklahoma punter Siebert, I might try to come after this. I might come try to block this field goal in the end zone.
They do come after it, and Seibert gets the kick away. And Oklahoma downs it close to midfield. And so Kansas will have it there with 2 timeouts. 1:39 to go. Dave Pasch, Greg McElroy, Tom Luganville down on the field. All right, Greg, it's the first time we've had a chance to see Oklahoma in person this year. Through almost a half a play. What do you think so far?
A little lethargic. I mean, the team really hasn't responded the way that you thought they might. Yeah, they did have the turnover deep in Kansas territory that they cashed in on, but the passing game has been somewhat erratic, understandably so. With wind and conditions like this, it's difficult for Baker Mayfield and company to have a lot of production through the air. But I've been really surprised by how ineffective they've been from time to time trying to run the football. You haven't seen Rodney Anderson or Sermon Adams really have many opportunities to break free against what's been a pretty stingy effort from Kansas's defense.
Carter Stanley trying to take off, and he's going to get sacked instead by Javonte Lampkin. Lampkin has missed time at Oklahoma due to suspension on 2 occasions. And he's going to get more playing time now with the injury to Marquez Overton. He makes the hit for a 5-yard loss. A lot of injuries for Oklahoma. We talked about the guys up front. Also Jordan Thomas missing today's game. 2nd straight game that he's missed due to injury. Oklahoma has West Virginia next week in Norman. And perhaps the Big 12 championship game after that. Incomplete pass intended for Herbert. With Texas beating West Virginia today, Oklahoma, if it wins this game, will clinch a spot in the Big 12 championship game. The likely matchup is TCU, especially if Oklahoma State ends up losing today to K-State.
And they've been so consistent this year, and so many times, especially against top-level competition, they've gotten off to fast starts. Last week against TCU, the best defense in the Big 12. They come right out of the gates, and they roll in the first half. Hasn't been the case today, and that's really a testament to the way Kansas has played.
Pass deflected at the line by Ward, so it's 4th and 15. So instead of moving the football, they go backwards and now have to punt it back to Oklahoma.
He's trying to get a nice little hitch stick right there to the tight end, Ben Johnson. Just trying to get anything going through the air. And Oklahoma is having none of it. Now they get a chance to potentially come after a punt. If I were them, I'd call the punt block right here.
He gets it away. Kicking into the wind, and the fair catch made by Lamb at the 16-yard line. So another chance here for Baker Mayfield. 50 seconds to go. 2 timeouts left. They, so far today in yards per play, about half of what they normally get, which leads the country at 8.5 yards per play. They average 600 yards of total offense on the season. They have about 111 so far in this game.
They've just been uncharacteristically flat, really. I mean, they just haven't had much going through the air. One of their best players, Dimitri Flowers, has been a non-factor to this point. Hasn't even touched the football. Haven't had many opportunities downfield, which is where they've always made their hay. It just doesn't look like the Sooner team we've seen over the last few weeks.
Lincoln Riley, the head coach, told us he worked him harder in practice than any other week, knowing that it's human nature to look past an inferior foe. Mayfield on 1st down, surveying the field. Now throws downfield, and it's on target. And there's Flowers making the grab. There's a penalty flag down, though. Mayfield may have taken a shot after the play, and that's Drew Samia, the right guard, that's having a conversation with Baker, who is wincing right now. And I don't know if he's wincing because he's angry or if he's in pain.
Foul. Roughing the passer, number 13, defense. 15-yard penalty at the end of the run. Automatic, 1st down.
He's definitely hurt on that play. And what is Hassan defense thinking there?
And honestly, that should be targeting. I mean, he is launching his body. You can see the shoulder. He's launching into the head or neck area of Baker Mayfield. Not only is it a big play, you add 15 more yards, and defense, frankly, he should be ejected after the launch. You can see it. It's not crown of the helmet or anything like that, but forcible contact, a launch to the head or neck area of a defenseless player, which is what Baker Mayfield was right there. That should have been targeting call.
Mayfield throws downfield, incomplete. Flag down. Pass intended for Andrews. You just wonder how Mayfield is doing physically right now. You saw him wincing after taking a shot.
15. Defense, 10-yard penalty from the previous spot. Automatic, first down.
So back-to-back penalties on Hassan defense.
You could see clear as day. I mean, grabbing Brown on multiple occasions as he tried to get free. It's a good call by the officials. Bad sequence by defense.
And so Kansas calls a timeout.
Second half, 30 seconds away.
Oklahoma still with 2 timeouts and an opportunity to get some points here going into the locker room. And we'll try to see if we can get an update on Mayfield and whether he's 100% after that hit. But you see on that sequence there, I mean, looking at Kansas, why they've struggled this year, but also why Oklahoma has won games. That's happened several times where they've been the benefit of somebody else making a mistake. And frankly, that's sometimes how you win championships, where other guys are making errors and you're making the right plays.
And they're capitalizing. I mean, if you look at Baker Mayfield creating some time, allowing Flowers to uncover, I mean, this guy's going to make 2 or 3 big plays every quarter. It's going to happen. Just a matter of when. And right there, Flowers, first time he's involved today, makes a huge play that gives Oklahoma new life offensively. You think they might take it to the half. Instead, now they're trying to steal some points before the end of the half.
I mean, we saw Mayfield do it on 4th down in the first quarter, where he escapes the pocket, looks like there's nothing there, and all of a sudden a receiver comes free. Not only is it a first down, but it's a touchdown. Here's Anderson running the ball. He takes it to the 24-yard line. Oklahoma will call a timeout, and that will leave the Sooners with 1 and 19 seconds to go.
No, Greg and Dave, you know, as you look at Baker Mayfield and his performance in this first half, I think so much of it is the fact that this Kansas defense has won with coverage, because they have forced Baker Mayfield to pat the ball. He's held onto the ball. They're used to being such a rhythm and timing, explosive, big play element offense. They haven't had that. They're kind of out of sync just a little bit. They don't get that play from Flowers, and they're still backed up in their own end, and they've had horrible field position this entire second quarter.
Yeah, and Tom, I mean, the 2 plays that Oklahoma's had have really been because Baker Mayfield has moved around in the pocket and allowed his receivers additional time to uncover.
No question.
The original touchdown where he found Rodney Anderson, who, by the way, was blocking on the play, and then decided, hey, I'm going to sneak out since there's green grass in front of me. And then that one to Flowers, which has them eyeing points here at the end of the half.
That's Anderson leaving the backfield on 2nd and 5 and 19 seconds to go. And 1 timeout left for the Sooners. Mayfield slings it to Brown. And Brown gets the first down to the 15-yard line. Brown heading for the end zone. Touchdown with 10 seconds to go in the half. 2 touchdown passes on the day now for Baker Mayfield, giving him 33 on the season.
My, how quickly things can change. Here we are about 30 seconds ago talking about Oklahoma's offense and how they've been kind of stagnant, but they haven't really been able to do much through the air. Boom. Baker Mayfield makes a big play. They're helped with a couple defensive penalties. And then he gets it to Brown with a lot of space, and he beats the defenders to the pylon. You can see how explosive this group is when they're clicking.
Good block by Trey Sermon to help out. There's a penalty marker down on the point after. The kick was good. Let's see what the foul was.
Personal foul. Hands to the face. Number 98. Defense. That 15-yard penalty will be on the kickoff. The try is good.
It's on Keyshawn Simmons of KU.
You just watch Baker Mayfield. Look how fast the ball gets out of his hands. I mean, he flips his feet so quickly. And throwing a quick game as a right-handed passer to your right like that is difficult. To get your feet around in a line to deliver the ball accurately, that kind of shows you just how athletic Baker Mayfield is. And you get the ball into the hands of Brown with green grass, you can see just how fast he is. He is so fast in the open field. no one was able to catch him as he found some space.
Those two guys have hooked up quite often this year. That's 5 touchdowns now for Marquise Brown. And they're similar in a lot of ways. Nobody wanted either coming out of high school. Brown is from Hollywood, Florida. He originally committed to Utah State, but didn't play there, then went to junior college, ended up at Oklahoma. He's 5'11", 116 pounds. Then you have Baker Mayfield. He was offered scholarships by FAU, New Mexico, Rice, and Washington State. That's it. He's from Austin, so he stayed in state, went to Texas Tech, walked on. Won Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, but they didn't want him anymore there, so he ends up at Oklahoma. And now he might win the Heisman Trophy as the kick goes out of bounds. Kansas will start on the 35 with 10 seconds to go here in the half. Kick off your Week 11 NFL Sunday with the Countdown Crew at 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN. Of course, streaming live on the ESPN app. And then our Week 11 Monday Night Football matchup is a good one between the Falcons and the Seahawks. Reports about Cam Chancellor maybe missing the rest of the season. Already Richard Sherman out. Earl Thomas been in and out of the lineup, so the Legion of Boom, not what it once was. Monday night Countdown kicks off for coverage 6 Eastern prior to Falcons Seahawks.
Yeah, you look at Baker Mayfield there. So many people have said that they remind him an awful lot of the Seattle Seahawks quarterback, Russell Wilson.
From the dead ball spot, first down, Kansas.
And I can understand why people have made that comparison. I think they're similar in the way they can create, their stature, of course, their measurables, how big they are, how thick they are. They're similar in size, and I also think they're very similar in moxie. Russell Wilson has that it factor, that ability to shoulder the load when need be. It's exactly what Baker Mayfield has done over the course of his college career. He's been just sensational and will likely in a few weeks be the proud owner of the most coveted individual award in all of sports, in my opinion, the Heisman Trophy.
And we double-checked this pregame with our research crew. No former walk-on has won the Heisman Trophy. So Baker Mayfield would be the first to accomplish that feat. Kansas in position here just to take a knee and go to the locker room. And people will tune in. Maybe they'll see the score and say, oh, 21-3, it's what we expected. But if you watch the first half, Kansas had opportunities, but the Jayhawks really were their own worst enemy. Baker Mayfield was good, not great in that first half, but all that matters is what's on the scoreboard. It's 21-3, Oklahoma at the break.
ESPN, home of the New Year's Six and the college football playoff.
Welcome back to college football on ESPN, presented by PlayStation Vue. The number 4 team in the country on the road, leading 21-3 as we look at our first half stats, brought to you by Hooters. Oklahoma with 170 yards of offense, holding Kansas to 69. Even though it's an 18-point lead for Oklahoma, didn't really feel that way. Kansas left some plays on the board, 2 dropped interceptions by the Jayhawks, a couple of costly penalties, and they give up a touchdown in the final minute of the half. They're working on that right shoulder of Baker Mayfield. There was a cheap shot late hit by a defensive back for Kansas on Mayfield, and he was wincing in pain after. Take a look back at our Buick Drive recap.
Baker Mayfield can do it in a multitude of different ways, but the way that I love watching him do it is when he creates on his own. Right here, Rodney Anderson is blocking on the play, not even out in the route scheme. Baker Mayfield runs around for many, many seconds and finds him. And then he can also do it methodically, getting the ball out of his hands very quickly to Brown for the final touchdown of the first half. He's so efficient when he's dialed in. Hasn't been dialed in the whole day today, but trying to find a rhythm here in the second half.
Kansas will start with the football from the 25-yard line. And on first down, they run Herbert. Not much, maybe a yard. And back on the field is Marquez Overton for Oklahoma, so that's a good sign. He's a key player on that defensive front. All right, Greg, we talked about Mayfield. What did you think about Oklahoma overall in that first half?
Just sloppy. I mean, on defense, they had some good moments. Of course, the turnover late down low in the Kansas area that led to the touchdown was huge, but for the most part, just inconsistent on offense outside of a few big plays.
And this ball is on target, and finally a play is made. Sims with a catch. Mentioned the dropped interceptions. There were dropped balls by receivers in the first half, but not that time. 34-yard play.
They went to Chase Harrell many times in the first half and didn't get the results they were looking for. Now they say, hey, we're going to give it to Steven Sims. We're going to try to take the top off of the defense, and they do it with a well-thrown ball by Carter Stanley and a tremendous catch by Steven Sims, the speedy junior.
Previous play is under further review.
They're going to look here to make sure that he secured the ball all the way to the ground. I think it may have come out when he hit the ground. Watch here when he goes to the ground, Greg. See if the ball pops up out of his hand when he hits the ground.
It looks like he has possession of it. Obviously, not the best look at what happens at the end because of the bodies on the sideline that are in the way. You can clearly see that he has possession of it right there. It does move right there at the end, but I think that catch was completed.
Right. Did he take enough steps before he went out of bounds where he didn't need to secure the ball to the ground because he already had possession?
Yeah, I think that play will definitely stand. I know that it comes a little bit loose, and we've seen many times over the course of the last 10 years when replay has really become a big part of what we do at the collegiate and in the NFL. But, and we've seen many times where guys go to the ground and it comes out, looks like a perfect catch, and they call it incomplete. But I don't see this being the case. It looked to me like Sims had possession, got a couple feet in bounds, had control as he went to the ground, and as he hit the ground, the ball popped up just briefly. I would expect this call to stand for sure.
After review, the ruling on the field is confirmed. It is a catch. First down, Kansas.
So he controlled the ball as an upright receiver, and then once he had possession, he went to the ground out of bounds, and at that point, he was a runner. So it's a first down to the 40-yard line.
Huge play from Kansas. Something they needed because they haven't been able to do much offensively.
Can they pay it off, though? They haven't done that yet today. Carter Stanley is the quarterback. He's starting his 4th straight game for Kansas, coming off a game in which he threw 3 touchdowns against Texas, but also 3 interceptions. He's been pretty solid, though, today for the most part. Herbert, the running back, stacked up at the line of scrimmage by 4 Sooners.
Well, guys, David Beatty really encouraged coming out of the locker room. He realizes the plays that are there to be made, and they finally made one there with Sims, but that's been there all day. Feels great about the defensive performance. Really, Baker Mayfield's made 2 plays the entire first half on offense. You can't ask for more than that from this Kansas defense, and now good field position on offense.
And Tom, I heard him tell you it shouldn't be 21-3, and he's right. It didn't feel that way at all. It was a 4-point game for most of that half, with Kansas playing as well as Oklahoma for most of it. Another pass that's on target, and Ben Johnson with the grab. He steps out of bounds short. It'll be 3rd down and 2 for KU.
This is a really good opening drive. Moving the pocket, trying to hit a ball downfield, and utilizing some of their tempo.
Herbert on the pitch, gets the first down easily, and knocked out of bounds. Oklahoma could not get lined up in time to combat the tempo by the Jayhawks.
And a good use of it there, too. Likely 4-down territory, so even if the snap is bobbled, you go down, you're probably going to try to go for it anyways. So a good use of the tempo right there to try to get an advantage on the perimeter.
They'll give it to Herbert again. Taken down to the 27-yard line by Kenneth Murray, a true freshman. Oklahoma finds itself in the top 4 after knocking off TCU last week. But there are a lot of people that thought they would jump more than a spot. And it makes you wonder how the committee feels about the Big 12 as a whole, not just Oklahoma.
And their defense, really. I mean, the committee values complete teams, but I would have had the Sooners at number 2 in last week's rankings.
Play action here for Stanley, and Not on the same page with Sims, who stopped his route and the pass sails to the end zone. But do you think also the committee looks at the conference as a whole? You're talking about evaluating teams, whether they're complete. I mean, is there a complete team in the Big 12?
I think you can make a case that there's not, but the Big 12 naturally is going to skew statistics to help the offense because of the type of attacks you see on a week-to-week basis. So it's hard to be complete when you're running up tempo and when you're running some of these air raid principles, variations of the air raid, but these defenses, man, they're putting a lot of conflict.
Another shot here on 3rd down. A lot of contact downfield, but no flag. Fairs and Motley tangled up, 4th down.
Good coverage by Motley on the perimeter. Fairs is a big body wide receiver, and I think Motley might have gotten away with a pass interference. You can see, I mean, there's a lot of contact naturally, but it looked like Motley hung on a little bit longer than he probably should have.
The field goal is good. I also thought that Will Johnson underneath, actually no good, excuse me, no good on the field goal, but Will Johnson underneath looked like he had a hold of the face mask of Ben Johnson. They didn't throw a flag for either play. A missed field goal by Rui, and it remains 21-3. Oklahoma, missed field goal from 39 yards. We're back on college football on ESPN, presented by PlayStation View. Oklahoma in front 21-3 after a missed field goal by Kansas. And Baker Mayfield and the Sooner offense take over at their 22-yard line. It's been a spectacular year for Baker Mayfield. He hands it off to Rodney Anderson, who's really come on the last couple of games. And it's a gain of about 5 yards. Mayfield closing in on Colt McCoy for number 3 all-time in total yards in Big 12 history.
It's amazing just how productive he's been and how consistent he's been over the course of his career.
On 2nd and 5, short throw to Brown. And that's well defended, so it'll be 3rd down. And everybody talks about the moxie of Mayfield, his personality, but there is a lot of substance. There are numbers that back up just how good of a player this guy is. And again, completion percentage #1 in college football, #2 in total offense, #3 in touchdown passes.
It's amazing. And his intangibles might be his best attribute, like you just alluded to. He's as good a leader as you have in college football and really brings out the best of all of his teammates.
On 3rd and 2, gets it out of his hand quickly to Brown. I mean, you made that point in the first half. That's not an easy throw, but Mayfield made it look easy there.
He always does, and on these throws to your right, as a right-handed passer in quick game, he gets his feet around so quickly and delivers the ball so accurately. It's amazing just how consistent those feet are in the quick game to his right.
Hand off to Anderson. He's done for a loss. And the accuracy with Baker Mayfield is a thing that gets overlooked. And people see that completion percentage at 71. They assume they're all short throws, dink and dunk. But they have the most big plays through the air of anybody in college football. They're taking a lot of shots. And he threw a great deep ball earlier that was dropped in the first half. Here Mayfield is dropped, sacked by Dorrance Armstrong at the 32 for a loss. And a flag comes in, more pushing and shoving, post whistle. This all started in pregame when the Kansas captains elected not to shake Baker Mayfield's hand. And Mayfield's teammates, as they usually do, have had his back throughout. We also saw a cheap shot by Hassan Defense on Baker Mayfield towards the end of the first half.
After the play was over, unsportsmanlike conduct, number 71, offense. 15-yard penalty from the dead ball spot. The down counts. 3rd down. That's number 71's first unsportsmanlike conduct foul for the game.
That's on Bobby Evans. And you know, it started with the taunting, though. Armstrong clearly wasn't getting off of Baker Mayfield and was taunting. Here's what we were talking about pregame. Mayfield going for the handshake and none of the Kansas players moving their hands from behind their backs.
Yeah, He has definitely pressed some buttons on that Kansas sideline. This defense, I imagine they've had some words for Baker Mayfield at the bottom of a few piles. You got to keep your head if you're Bobby Evans. I know that your quarterback's lying there defenseless, but you can't take a cheap shot late.
Sooners just run the ball in 3rd and 29. Anderson cuts it back. And it was an excellent run, but had a long way to go. Needed 29. And Anderson shaken up. And he's been so good lately, Rodney Anderson, and injuries have really cost him a tremendous career. He's basically missed 2 years because of injury. Hopefully that's not a bad one as he hobbles off to the sideline.
Yeah, I hope he's okay. He's so important to what they do. They're deep at running back, but he is definitely the most consistent performer out of those young men in the backfield.
He can do so much in the passing game for you as well. Seibert punting here, short kick, and it's fair caught on the 31-yard line by Steve Sims. Carter Stanley of the Jayhawk offense back to work.
ESPN College Football, brought to you by Chevy, the only brand to earn J.D. Power Dependability Awards for cars, trucks, and SUVs 2 years in a row. And McDonald's, I'm loving it.
Hardest renderings of what Jayhawk fans are hoping will be a refurbished University Memorial Stadium here at KU. They got an indoor practice facility that is first and foremost on the agenda. $315 million total in planned renovations. This stadium's been around since 1921. And you'd have to think that would help recruiting. So hard to recruit here at Kansas to the football program.
And you have to think some of the adjustments that have been made to the recruiting calendar with early signing period and early visitation, maybe those things will help Kansas get a boost as well.
Straight ahead run for Herbert, and it's a gain of about 2. Well, you and I, along with Tom, we had a chance to take in a Kansas basketball game yesterday, and that's mid-November against South Dakota State, and the place was absolutely packed and jumping as that pass is pulled in by Fairs. And you wonder, can David Beatty get the same kind of reaction from Kansas football fans? What does he have to do to get people excited about KU football? Obviously winning's the answer, but how do you get there?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to start from the ground up. They got to get better in the trenches. They got to get better personnel. And they got to find a star at quarterback like they had 10 years ago in Todd Reesing.
It's been done here before, guys, under Glenn Mason and Mark Mangino. It can be done again.
Yeah, we're just a decade removed from winning a New Year's Six game, winning the Orange Bowl. Pass sails over the head of a receiver and then almost intercepted by Trey Norwood. Stanley may have just been throwing that one up for grabs on 3rd down. It's 4th and 4.
Stanley just having a prayer, just trying to get rid of it as he maneuvered in the backfield. And obviously that pass way off target. Very fortunate that it didn't result in an interception.
Cole Moose will punt it away. C.D. Lamb is deep for the Sooners. And a backtrack, and Oklahoma will have the ball inside its 20 when we come back.
Welcome back to Lawrence, where the Sooners lead by 18. Kansas has had their fair share of opportunities, several of which have come while they're on offense with drop passes, few errant throws, big plays down the field that the receivers just couldn't reel in. But their defense too, they've had chances here. The first play of the game tipped, could have been intercepted. Another opportunity here that could have resulted in an interception. Kansas just hasn't been able to make the big play. And if you're going to knock off one of the best teams in the country, which Oklahoma is, you have to reel those balls in.
Quick throw by Mayfield to Badet, tackled for a loss by Hassan Defense.
Try to find comparisons for Baker Mayfield and how he's going to translate to the next level and how he currently is. His physical stature, his size, his thickness, his ability to move reminds me of Russell Wilson. But when I watch him, I see more Drew Brees in him than anything. Sometimes spastic, but very accurate with the football. Has a good understanding of what his strengths are too, and knows how to throw receivers open.
And the stature is similar to Breeze as well. 2nd and 11. Mayfield dumping it off to Badette going the other way. Close to a first down. And he's got the first down to the 30.
One thing that he also does is just how instinctive he is. He has eyes in the back of his head. He has such a great feel in the pocket and reminds me so much of Johnny Manziel in that regard. But Johnny Manziel fizzled in the NFL naturally. Baker Mayfield has a much better head on his shoulders and a better understanding of how to live life away from the field.
Here comes a reversal. 3 straight plays. They get it to Badette on the perimeter. And a sound defense along with Bryce Tornaden get him to the ground on this play. 1-yard pickup.
You know, Greg, as you talk about Baker Mayfield, you know, he's going to be critiqued on his measurables. He's going to be critiqued on the scheme that he's coming from. But they better start investigating all of the stuff that you can't coach. Because the point you just made about the head on the shoulders and understanding how to handle himself, I think that, above and beyond everything else, is why he will succeed. Now, he's got to get in the right situation, but there's no doubt he's got all the good stuff that you got to have that you can't coach.
Mayfield to throw on 2nd down. And Andrews wide open, gets the first down to the 45. There's nothing more difficult in sports than evaluating whether a quarterback is good enough to play at the NFL. But one thing is for certain, we have not seen a rise of a player from rags to riches like Baker Mayfield. To go from a walk-on to winning the Heisman Trophy, probably something we've never seen in college football.
It's amazing, and he really plays with such a chip on his shoulder. And I know that people will knock him for some of the things that Tom alluded to. His size, he's not the biggest guy. He comes from an air raid style system that hasn't always translated. But does he make plays? Yes. Does he make your team better? Yes. And does he win? Absolutely.
Mayfield throws on target. Granted, the receiver wide open. Calcaterra stumbles and falls down at the 37-yard line.
And he's not the most popular guy in the world. He's a little polarizing. Naturally, he loves to be the villain. But he thrives in that role.
Mayfield off a pump fake, has an open receiver, and it's caught inside the 5. Michael Jones, 1st and goal, OU. 34 yards.
Great throw right here by Baker Mayfield. A little pump action underneath. They slide Jones on the fade from the slot position. Little bit underthrown. See the pump. Look at him reset his feet. He fakes as he's thrown to the left, resets his feet, takes time to deliver it accurately, and does so for a big completion to give them a fresh set of downs inside the 5.
Mayfield rolling out, and it's caught. It's a touchdown. Mark Andrews, who himself has a bright future. 5th touchdown for Andrews. That's 3 touchdown passes on the day for Mayfield, 34 on the year.
And look, he's just looking at the Kansas sideline.
Right there. Now that's
inappropriate.
That's inappropriate, uncalled for. And that right there, NFL GMs are going to see that, and they're going to mark it down, saying that's not what we want in the National Football League. It's not what Lincoln Riley wants at Oklahoma. It's not what we want in college football as fans. No place for that. Extra point is good, 28-3. I mean, this is, you mentioned the polarizing player, Baker Mayfield. We get the good with the great plays, but then we get the actions that we should never see in college football. Borderline classless by Mayfield after the touchdown pass. Baker Mayfield's thrown for 194 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Oklahoma, the number 4 team in the country, with a win today, will clinch a spot of the Big 12 title game and move a step closer to perhaps a college football playoff berth. Miami and Clemson play in the ACC championship game, so the loser of that game is going to be out. Miami hung on today to beat Virginia. Had to come from behind, was down 2 scores in the second half of that game. Short kickoff fielded near the 10-yard line by Shadler and out close to the 30-yard line. All right, so it all started in pregame where for some reason the Kansas players electing not to even shake hands with Baker Mayfield. You see, look at the Kansas players continually putting their hands behind their back. Now Mayfield talking some trash after the touchdown pass, talking trash to the crowd as well, telling him to stick to basketball and that they have one win on the season. Moments ago, there's some things we couldn't show you again because of the language and the actions, grabbing obviously a certain part of his person and screaming at the Kansas sideline. But it's stuff like that, when people see that, they can't help but make the bad Johnny Manziel comparison. As Stanley throws complete, close to a first down for Fairs.
And I love Baker Mayfield's moxie. His teammates love him. They respond to him. But in a few months, he's going to be put in charge, and he's going to be the face of a multi-billion-dollar organization. You have to handle yourself with class and understand that all eyes are on you 100% of the time. And look, I appreciate that he has a chip on his shoulder. He plays angry all the time. I love those attributes about him, but he crosses the line far too often. He needs to reel it back in.
Williams off the left side, and he's out to the 47-yard line.
And when you're the quarterback at Oklahoma, when he's the quarterback of an NFL franchise, young kids are going to look at him and look up to him, buy his jersey, support him. You have to carry yourself in a way that would make your family proud. And I think the antics that he just displayed on the sideline were completely classless and unnecessary.
And again, it goes back to, can you win a national championship with a quarterback that is that volatile? Williams is brought down short of the line to gain. Yes, he's good enough to win you a championship, but are actions like that going to cost you at some point? Not just for the next level, but to try to get to your goal this year of winning a championship.
I don't think so, because he can elevate his play, and the more mad he is, the better he has a tendency to play. I mean, and it's one of those situations where we're watching game day when the guys are picking jerseys and hats and they're saying who they choose is going to win the game. They say Baker. They don't even say the Sooners. He is as good as anybody we've seen in college football in some time.
And a little problem there with the handoff, and Okoronkwo is right in the face of Stanley for a loss. So it's 4th and long.
You know, Dave, you talk about, can this prevent them from getting where they want to get? You know, as long as what he's doing, which we all agree has crossed the line, if it's not going to get him penalties and put his team in a negative position to actually perform the task, then no, I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think that this team is good enough to compete with anybody when they're on their best day.
Kansas punting the ball here on 4th and 6. And it checks up and goes out of bounds around the 40-yard line. This may be, in my opinion, the greatest challenge for a first-year head coach, Lincoln Riley, because what do? The whole world just saw that. Right. Everybody saw that. So you've got a quarterback that you said feeds off that, feeds off being angry and creating his own energy. But now you've got to talk to him and say, you're being immature. Yeah. You're hurting your team. You're hurting the program.
Yeah, you can't do it. It's a bad look for the organization. My question, though, to you and to Tom and to everybody out there is, if you're in the locker room with Baker Mayfield, you're one of his teammates, does it affect the way you look at him?
And does it affect for you, a guy that
it does for me, but I'm not the one that's going on the field with him every single Saturday and competing with him and seeing the work that he's putting in, day out, to allow his team to have success every single Saturday. Now, his antics are uncalled for. There's no denying that, and his teammates would even tell him that too. But he plays his heart out for those guys every single week, and I think that's really what you have to evaluate when trying to determine if it's over the line.
Mayfield throwing it downfield, and again, the pass on the money. Should have been caught by Brown. What a great throw by Mayfield. I mean, there's the good again of Baker Mayfield, the ability to throw it with accuracy way downfield.
I mean, terrific throw. I mean, between the white lines, there's no problem with anything that Baker Mayfield does. He crosses the line from time to time, but physically what he does, making the guys around him better, being accurate, staying within the system, being hyper competitive. I mean, like I said, he's going to win the Heisman Trophy as a result of how well he's played on the field, but there are areas in which he can certainly grow over the next few years.
Long throw by Mayfield. That's on target again. Calcaterra with the grab. Well, to your point, the more angry he gets, the better he plays.
It gets him in a zone. It fuels him. And listen, I'm all for creating your own energy, and that's all fine and dandy. Let's not forget, guys, the players that are on his team, and the question you posed, Greg, they're not aware of what's just taken place. They're just playing. So it's the during the week distraction that you would worry about.
Sermon on the run gets a couple of yards.
Ball carrier is number
Mayfield is 9 of 10 passing in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, he's like Rocky Balboa. Remember that fight when he's playing against Clubber Lang? He said, what's he doing? And Mick said, he's getting mad. That's what happens with Baker Mayfield. And the more mad he gets, the more fired up he is, the better he has a tendency to play. That's why you've seen him put his best foot forward in some of the biggest matchups of the year, like Ohio State, TCU, and Oklahoma State.
Closing in on a minute to go here in the third with Oklahoma in command, 28-3. Play clock down to 1. And a quick throw by Mayfield that's knocked away. Incomplete, intended for Jones. It appeared that Shaquille Richmond got a piece of it. 4th down, and Oklahoma appears as if it will go for it.
Looks like it. This is definitely 4-down territory. Knowing how their offense has been operating in the second half, it's not surprising to see them still on the field. I try to look in the direction of number 36, Dimitri Flowers here. Hasn't had many opportunities today. This could be one for him here.
On 4th down, the pass is caught right at the line to gain by Andrews. Richmond with a nice tackle right on the line. And they'll measure with 44 seconds to go.
Try to get Andrews on the motion, get him some momentum as he runs to the flat. It looks like he had enough. Spot was a little bit in favor of Kansas. It looked like he had more yards than they gave him, but
that's what I thought too. I thought he had it.
I thought he did too, based on the first look.
Against where the ball is, not where the body of the receiver is on the catch. It's enough to move the chains and keep possession of the ball. Oklahoma trying to get to 10-1. The Sooners play in Norman next week against West Virginia. Then the Big 12 championship game. TCU the likely opponent. Still not definite. They just beat TCU last week 38-20. Replay looking at the spot to try to confirm whether it's a first down. Right now, let's check in with Adnan.
All right, Dave, thank you very much. Want to let you know what's happening with Navy and Notre Dame tied at 17 early in the fourth. This is Brandon Wimbush to Kevin Stevenson, and currently Notre Dame has the lead. By the way, you're going to go back on Greg's show with that take on Baker Mayfield. Well done, Dave.
I'm sure the Sooner fans would love that. But look, we don't want to sit here and totally kill the kid for an entire quarter. But again, because that was seen and the other antics that have happened off the field in the summer for Baker Mayfield, it just leaves a big question mark about his ability to lead a team to a championship now and lead a team in the future in the National Football League.
Yeah, and he's going to have that opportunity. And if you just evaluate what he's done on the field, and today he hasn't had his best stuff. I mean, if anything, he's had his B- B game at best. When he's operating and clicking on all cylinders, he's impossible to defend.
After review, the ruling on the field stands. First down.
Just so enjoyed watching him play this year. I mean, I know off-field that's fine. You talk about that in another conversation. But if you just watch the way he's been able to elevate his play, the bigger the stage, the better he's played. It's just truly amazing just how far he's come. To think starting his career as a walk-on, now the likely winner of the 2017 Heisman Trophy, barring something completely unforeseen. What a star he is.
There's no question his teammates love him. They have his back. They respond to him. He brings out the best in them as he throws to Andrews to the 10-yard line. He's getting better with every toss here in the third quarter. 24-yard pickup.
Such an accurate throw, on time, in stride to a big body tight end as he moves across the middle.
That was good coverage too, Greg. You can't defend a throw like that.
Yeah, he just threw it so early. Anticipated the throw and just hit it right in stride. We've seen that so many times over the last few years.
So we go to the fourth quarter with Oklahoma in full command. 28-3 over Kansas. Baker Mayfield has thrown 3 more touchdown passes on the season. He's accounted for a total of 39 touchdowns in 2017. All Sooners as we go to the fourth. Welcome back to college football on ESPN, presented by PlayStation View. Oklahoma in full command of this game behind the great play of Baker Mayfield. 3 touchdown passes, 242 yards. And in his career now against Kansas, he's thrown for over 800 yards, 11 touchdowns, and no interceptions. On his way likely to the Heisman Trophy and a 10-win season for Oklahoma. They have West Virginia next week, then the Big 12 title game. Mayfield on 1st and goal, looking for his 4th touchdown pass of the day. Throws high for C.D. Lamb, incomplete.
And one of the few throws he's missed in the second half. He has been so dialed in. Of course, the conditions early in the game, so windy, so difficult to really be accurate under the circumstances. When he got that 20-minute break at halftime, though, man, he is locked in. He's found so many guys open in stride to allow for a lot more production offensively.
Since halftime, only 2 incompletions for Mayfield. 2nd and goal from the 10. Mayfield and Andrews wide open in the end zone for the touchdown. That's 2 for Andrews on the day. And 4 now for Mayfield. There's a penalty marker down though. If it holds, that'll be the 35th touchdown pass and the 40th touchdown accounted for number 6.
Ineligible man downfield. Number 78. Offense. 5-yard penalty from the previous spot. Still 2nd down.
It's on the left tackle, Orlando Brown, so take it off the board.
Trying to go with an RPO right here. Look at the left tackle, Brown. They're trying to run the football. This is a run play. But Baker sees disappearance by the linebackers, and they come up, which allows Andrews to get open in the end zone. A good read by Mayfield, but Brown unaware that he was going to be trying to throw the football. It's tough with those RPOs. Those linemen don't know when that ball's coming out, Dave.
Hard for Orlando Brown to stop, too. At 350 pounds, you get that body moving.
He's a big boy.
Hard to hold up after 3 yards. Mayfield keeping it here. That was a great fake. He's down to the 10-yard line, tackled by Hassan Defense, who took a cheap shot at Mayfield in the first half after the play and was penalized for it.
Hey guys, remember talking to Lincoln Riley? You know, he's a proponent of changing the lineman downfield rule from 3 yards to 1 off of the RPO because he just doesn't think it's fair, and he's an offensive guy, and then that's the call they get penalized for.
It's the first time I've ever seen an offensive guy say, I don't like the RPO rule. I don't like the lineman downfield rule. Most offensive guys are saying, hey, no, just get rid of that rule altogether. Let's let our linemen run all the way downfield.
Yep.
It's tough to defend, no doubt about it.
Mayfield on 3rd and goal. Beautiful touch pass, but it was tipped at the last second, intended for Andrews. Well, we've seen Mayfield make that throw several times with 2 defenders on Andrews. Let's see if the defender touched it or if Andrews just couldn't pull it in.
Man, that's such a good throw. That is such a good throw. I mean, that's Drew Brees. That's Tom Brady. That's Peyton Manning. I mean, that's the level of accuracy that he's displayed time and time again over the course of this season. Just great ball placement. 2 defenders. Really tough catch on Andrews.
28-yard
But Mayfield gave him a chance. That's all you can ask for.
27-yard field goal try by Seibert. It's good, and it's 31-3. Oklahoma, minute into the 4th quarter here in Lawrence. This one goes back 1929, crosstown rivalry. UCLA, USC comes to you from the Coliseum tonight on ABC at 8 Eastern, 5 LA time. It's a rivalry that you grew up on, and a lot of people just assume because you went to Alabama and you high school ball in Texas, you're a Southerner, but you're LA cool.
I am still mourning the Dodger loss to the Houston Astros in the World Series. I'm starting to turn the page, thank goodness.
Scooped up by Shadler on the 25-yard line and knocked out a play at the 35 as we check with Adnan Burke in the studio.
Thanks very much, Dave. PlayStation View, multi-view. Just want to let you know what else is happening. K-State right now is all over Oklahoma State. 45-27. That game is on ESPN2 and on ABC. It's an absolute rout. Ohio State having no issues with Illinois. 52-7 right now for Urban Meyer and company. Back to Greg McElroy. Turn on the page with Dave Patrick.
Well, you kind of could see that coming. Ohio State, after last week, it's all on now for the Buckeyes, knowing that with Michigan next week, if they can win that game, they're in the Big Ten championship against Wisconsin. Badgers have one more, taking their undefeated season to the Paul Bunyan Axe game next week in Minneapolis against the Gophers. First down, Stanley hit. And the pass incomplete, intended for Sims. Bledsoe got a shot that time on Stanley. All right, let's look at, Greg and Tom, what's left for the top 4 teams. We'll move Oklahoma to the Big 12 championship. They clinch with a win today. Home to West Virginia. Not an easy game for Clemson next week in South Carolina. That game on ESPN.
Yeah, that'll be tough. Obviously, South Carolina having a much better year than anyone would have anticipated. And Clemson over the last month hasn't played their best football. I'll tell you the team that I'm most excited to watch over the next few weeks. It is this Oklahoma team. Can they continue to improve on defense? And will this offense continue to operate at a high level?
Got a flag here, movement. You also obviously have the Iron Bowl next week, which is as good a matchup as we've had in that game.
14, offense, 5-yard penalty, still second down.
Assuming that Alabama stays at 1. I mean, you got a top 6 matchup in the Iron Bowl game. Obviously, you played in many times. That is at Auburn. And then the winner to play Georgia in the SEC championship game. And Georgia has a tough game next week in Atlanta against rival Georgia Tech. But obviously, with Miami and Clemson playing each other, one of those teams is going to be out. Here's a double pass they were trying to set up, and Kwame Lassiter is tackled at the 24, son of former NFL safety that goes by the same name that played here in college, Kwame Lassiter.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, too, to see what happens with Oklahoma in the weeks to come. Miami did not look good today. Does Oklahoma potentially jump Miami into the 3 spot? Where does Wisconsin end up? They were dominant today against a ranked Michigan team. So it's going to be really interesting. I still think there's about 7 or 8 teams that can still get into the college football playoff depending on how things shake out. But man, what a wild month we're about to have here over the next few weeks.
On 3rd and 21, Kansas just runs the ball here, and Herbert is dumped, and they'll have to punt. And the tough thing for the committee is, remember, it's supposed to be about picking the best 4 teams. So you're not supposed to live week to week and say, well, Oklahoma struggled a little bit. Wisconsin beat Michigan, so automatically jump Wisconsin or jump Oklahoma. You've got to look at the entire body of the work of the entire season every single week, which is a difficult challenge for the committee. Back in a moment, we get an injured Kansas player. Khalil Herbert is down.
ESPN College Football is presented by PlayStation View. Watch the biggest moments in sports. Try it free today. And in part by T-Mobile, America's best unlimited network.
3 touchdown passes by Baker Mayfield and the Oklahoma Sooners on their way to a 10-1 record. and a 7-1 mark in conference play. The lone loss was against Iowa State. They had some close calls. Baylor, they won by 7, beat Texas by 5, Kansas State by 7, but also impressive wins over TCU and Oklahoma State, and obviously in Columbus against Ohio State. They beat the Buckeyes 31-16 back in mid-September. Off the side of the foot of the punter here on 4th down, going to sail way out of bounds, and Oklahoma is going to have the ball in Kansas territory after the poor punt by Cole Moose. They spot it at the 40-yard line, so it is a 15-yard punt. Here's Adnan.
All right, Dave, thank you. We check out what's happening in Athens, Kentucky, and Georgia. A week after being bottled up, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel both bursting out. This is Chubb going all the way for Georgia, bouncing back in a big way, 42-13, early in the 4th. Dave?
And then next week, Georgia's got Georgia Tech, followed by the SEC championship game.
That Georgia Tech game is not going to be easy. The way they run the football and obviously preparing for a triple option attack in only 7 days is never easy.
Well, you saw Notre Dame having trouble with Navy coming off a game, obviously, where they lose to Miami, and then you got Stanford next week, which is the exact opposite, right, of Navy. You know,
both committed to the run game. Both committed to the run game, but very, very different ways of going about their business.
Mayfield finds Calcaterra for a first down to the 25-yard line. And he has been terrific throwing the football here in the second half.
He really has. I mean, these wide receivers have made some plays for him too, but he really has been on the money since the start of the 3rd quarter. So accurate with the football, decisive, and getting the ball out on time.
Sermon straight ahead, and the true freshman is loose. Into the end zone, touchdown OU.
Trey Sermon has not had many opportunities today. Only his 3rd carry. But Rodney Anderson a little bit banged up earlier in the game. They put in Sermon, no problem. No drop off from the sophomore to the freshman. This running back group, you thought that there might be a drop off after Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon. They depart for the NFL. This group is deeper and as talented as they've ever been.
And the point after makes it 38-3, the 5th rushing touchdown of the season for Trey Sermon. But the offense for the Sooners all starts with the quarterback Baker Mayfield on their way to win number 10. SportsCenter finishes your day at 1:30 a.m. Eastern, 10:30 Pacific on ESPN, and find out who Mel Kiper Jr. thinks is the better NFL prospect, Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold. Lamar Jackson, he's not going to win the Heisman. It's probably going to be Baker Mayfield, but man, he's had a great year for Louisville, even though the Cardinals haven't been very good. SportsCenter with Linda Cohn and Kevin Connors on ESPN and the ESPN app. Also NBA highlights as well. Kickoff taken by Shadler, and Shadler past the 30, and good return out to the 42. And as we saw yesterday, kicking the football isn't easy. Our perhaps final 2 QBs at a pass. I don't know who that was, but it was good.
You were in pain the rest of the day, saying your foot hurt.
Been crying about it ever since.
Off the upright for McElroy, and then look at Luganville, barefoot, by the way, puts it through. He actually made a 40-yarder barefoot.
Yeah, he made it look easy. I can't kick. I can't even try. The fact that I got it off the air, off the ground, is truly amazing to me.
Our contests are diverse, guys, and that takes a certain level of athleticism.
I don't know.
All I know is when we got away from football is when I had trouble. We were just throwing the ball, even though you two guys are allegedly the 2 QBs and I'm the Bash. See, I was leading early, but now it's been all Luganville recently. Though Mac, if we have one more, right, has a shot to overtake Tom.
You got a chance. I need Tom to come in 3rd, though, and that's going to be tricky because the guy sitting to my left has struggled of late when it comes to our 2 QBs segments. That's for sure.
I think you really need to push the production guys to have one more, so you get one more crack.
Greg's a competitor. I can see him doing it.
I don't know. We'll see.
Pass off target intended for Ben Johnson. Maybe we can see who runs the option better next week if we end up in Atlanta.
Then
Isn't that the reason why I didn't stick around at Georgia Tech?
Yeah, we all might struggle with that. I can promise you. But I can tell you this much: I will never give kickers a hard time anymore because the pathetic attempts that we just gave on national television is not good.
3rd and 6 for Kansas on its 45-yard line. Pressure off the edge. Stanley's pass broken up. Stanley got leveled too on the throw by Brian Mead. It's 4th down.
Lost in the conversation today, guys, and I want to make sure that we hit it. What a job by this Oklahoma defense today. I mean, I know that this has been a group that has been criticized from time to time, but man, they have been stingy today. They haven't allowed Kansas much of anything, either on the ground or through the air. This group is clearly taking steps in the right direction.
I don't think there's any question at this point Oklahoma's one of the best 4 teams. But they still have tough games left. West Virginia next week, then the Big 12 championship game. We'll really see over those next 2 games whether they're deserving of a playoff spot. Well, if you're wondering what may have led to some of the antics by Baker Mayfield, Kansas, for some reason, decides that they're not going to shake his hand, and they continue to put their hands behind their back as he continues to talk with Kansas defenders. So there's trash talking on both sides. A lewd gesture here to the crowd.
He also has 1 win. Go cheer on basketball.
So he had a lewd gesture, inappropriate gesture to the Kansas sideline. He's not in the game right now. Kyler Murray is playing quarterback. Also some foul language that was caught on camera that we didn't show there. And then just talking to the fans. That was actually in the first half, well before the gesture, as Sermon runs left, and it's a gain of a couple. So Mayfield already had to apologize earlier in the season for the plant of the flag at Ohio State, and I'm sure we'll see an apology this week. And something Lincoln Riley will have to address and may not even know about in postgame. SportsCenter is going to carry the press conference. This is a big story now because something that happens often in football caught on camera, and something that is a regrettable moment for Baker Mayfield in what has been on the field the best season of any individual in college football in 2017.
Now on the field, he's just been sensational, and really every single time that his team has needed him to step up in a big moment, or to put the team on his back, or to score 62 against your in-state rival on the road, he's been able to deliver. He will be the Heisman Trophy winner, just by a matter of how much. It could be the most lopsided vote potentially in Heisman history. I wouldn't be shocked if it was.
Kyler Murray, the quarterback here on 3rd and 5. Transfer from Texas A&M. And looked like he stepped out of bounds before he threw the ball. Murray, a sophomore from Allen, Texas. Throwing a couple touchdown passes this season in relief of Mayfield.
Yeah, started his career at Texas A&M. Very highly regarded coming out of high school. And Tom, I know you've covered him and followed him closely.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be incredible in this offense.
Oh, I think he's going to be a star. Now, you talk about Baker Mayfield being measurable deficient. Kyler Murray takes it to another level, but boy, is he gifted. And it's exciting times under center for Oklahoma and their future over the next couple of years.
Yeah, talk about the stature. 5'10", $192 is what he's listed at. And the fair catch made at the 47-yard line by Sims. Here's Adnan in the studio.
All right, Dave, thank you. Coming up next, it is the 3rd game right now in college football here on ESPN. That'll be Darius Geis and LSU. 3 career games with 250 or more rushing yards. He's been great for Ed Orgeron. See what he can do against that Vols defense. LSU, Tennessee coming up just about 20 minutes from now. Dave?
All right, 10 more minutes before this one is wrapped up, and Oklahoma is 10-1. Sooners by 35 points. Lincoln Riley's done a phenomenal job at replacing Bob Stoops, who has been one of the best coaches in the country for 2 decades. Not an easy job. 34 years old, and be running this program with the expectations they have here. Sims on the catch, out of play after a gain of a few. Here are remaining schedules for teams 5 through 8. Georgia beating Kentucky right now. I mentioned Wisconsin still has Minnesota, then the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, and you don't see Ohio State listed yet. I still think if Ohio State wins the Big Ten and there's some chaos in front, they could have an outside shot of potentially getting in as a 2-loss team.
So at this point, you're going to have the SEC champ as that pass is caught. So one of 3 teams, right? Alabama, Auburn, Georgia. You're going to have the ACC champ, Miami or Clemson, and then it would seem the Big 12 champ and the Big 10 champ. Is that how it plays out, or does one conference get represented by 2 teams?
I don't think they're going to put 2 teams in. If you can justify including a conference champion, which I think they'll have a clear case of being able to do that, then that's what they'll do. They don't want to start a trend or a precedent, I don't think, by including 2 teams from the same league. Remember, back in 2011, that's kind of what got us to the college football playoff era to begin with. Alabama loses to LSU in the regular season. Alabama gets back in, and sure enough, Oklahoma State's left out. So I don't think they want to start a precedent with that. It might be, they might have to, naturally, if they have to put in the 4 best teams and no one steps forward, but I don't think that's something that they want to start.
John Michael Terry with a fumble recovery for Oklahoma. Well, it could get interesting if Clemson loses next week to South Carolina, then wins the ACC championship. And what happens if Georgia wins the SEC championship? Or if Alabama loses to Auburn, does what happened to Alabama, is it similar to what happened with Ohio State last year, where they get into the playoff without even playing in the SEC championship game? There's still so much that we don't know.
There really is. I mean, it's going to be chaotic over the next couple weeks, that's for sure. And man, it's going to be fun to watch, because every single week you have some type of outcome that you don't expect, and I would imagine that's what next week has a chance to deliver.
Murray on the keeper, and Murray, you see, man, how quick he is. The 37-yard line, first down.
Look at him. He's like a field mouse. Hey, guys, this is a player that did not lose a football game in high school as a starting quarterback. He started some games as a true freshman at Texas A&M, as we all know. But to be able to sit and mature and learn under the tutelage of Lincoln Riley, and maybe more importantly Baker Mayfield, in terms of how to operate the offense and play as a college player, what a benefit it's been to him to transfer to Oklahoma and not have to play right away.
He's the heir apparent with Mayfield off to the pros next year. Good throw that time. Calcaterra on the catch. Another OU first down.
It's the old saying, the rich get richer, right? You have a Heisman Trophy winner, more than likely. You replace him with maybe one of the best high school players we've ever seen in Kyler Murray. They still have a very young nucleus, too. I mean, they have a lot of guys that are going to be back, more than likely. All their running backs are underclassmen. All their wide receivers, for the most part, are underclassmen. And there might be a departure or 2 early to the NFL, but this Oklahoma team is here to stay, that's for sure.
Murray throwing again. Smallwood on the grab, knocked out of bounds at the 15. We mentioned earlier about Lincoln Riley taking over for Bob Stoops. We were talking with athletic director Joe Castiglione before the game. He says Coach Stoops, even though he's not coaching anymore, he's still very involved in the program, fundraising. And you look at what the Sooner program has been able to do this year, just a seamless transition when nobody really knew in his first head coaching job. I mean, you told the story that, what, 10 years ago, he was picking you up at the airport, recruiting you as a runner?
Yeah, I was taking a visit to Texas Tech. I was committed to Texas Tech at the time, and sure enough, Lincoln Riley was at the airport picking me up. That was below, they didn't send the graduate assistants to do that. They didn't send quality control coach to do that. He was even lower on the totem pole at that point.
Offense, 5-yard penalty. Still second down.
So what did you talk about? Did you talk ball, or was
we were close in age.
Can I take your luggage, Mr. McElroy?
We were close. He was 23, and I was, or 22, and I was 18 or 17. So we were close in age, and we developed a tremendous relationship. I've stayed in touch with him over the course of his travels to East Carolina, and I'm just so happy to see him having so much success early in his career as a head coach. He has really, really brought his own stamp to this program, and will continue to.
Murray steps up and runs. Murray again with great speed. Scoots out of play after he gets the first down. Well, Riley himself, like Baker Mayfield, was a walk-on quarterback at Texas Tech in 2006, and then just 4 years later, he's the offensive coordinator for East Carolina under Ruffin McNeil, and then comes 2 years ago to Oklahoma, hired by Bob Stoops to run the offense. They had been inconsistent offensively for many years. This is probably the most consistent stretch they've had in a long time offensively under the leadership of Lincoln Riley, and now he's the youngest head coach in FBS at 34. First and goal for the Sooners at the 9-yard line. Lincoln Riley was trying to call timeout, ran down the sideline.
Timeout, Oklahoma, first of the half, 30 seconds in Lincoln.
All right, so Oklahoma's going to win this game. They're going to advance. So what do you think as you look now and you've had a chance to see the Sooners in person? What gives them the best chance to win a national championship? What might keep them from winning a national title?
I think it's Baker Mayfield. It's all about how he plays. And the better and the higher they go, the better the defenses are going to get. And he did it already against a top-tier defense in Ohio State, a group that was really very talented in the trenches, a group that would traditionally give fits to an air raid style attack like Oklahoma runs, and he completely destroyed them. So I think he has gotten to the point now where he can elevate everyone's play to such a high level that he's going to be incredibly difficult to defend. Now on defense, I still have some concerns with some of the youth they have at the corner spot. I think inside in the front seven, they're very good. They haven't really been tested yet in the front seven, but that will come in the weeks to come.
Adams wrapped up in the backfield for a loss. Keyshawn Simmons on the stop.
You know, you guys were just discussing Lincoln Riley and his rise and how he's developed as a coach. And I really believe, you know, coming from the air raid system and got a Kansas player down here, coming from the air raid system where it's all dink and dunk and your run game is the perimeter screen game. I think Bob Stoops, being a defensive head coach, and the emphasis on the run game, I think he might have helped the development of Lincoln Riley more so than anybody else, because I think he forced him to think about offense a little bit differently when it comes to the usage of the players and the personnel, which created tremendous balance the moment he got to Oklahoma because of the personnel they had there that they hadn't had at other places Lincoln had been.
Tom, let me ask you the same question I just asked Greg. What for Oklahoma to win the national championship, what has to happen, and then what might keep them ultimately from winning a national title? Is Bryce tornadoed and is the injured Kansas player?
Well, I think if you look at where Oklahoma's had troubles with opponents that have been able to match up with them, I think all you've got to do is look at their games over the last 3 years versus Clemson. They had a really difficult time up front on both sides of the football versus the Clemson Tigers. And to Greg's point, the farther along you go and the stiffer the competition becomes, and the changing of the teams that you don't see during the regular season start getting on the field with you, how do you hold up front on the offensive and defensive side of the football? I think that's the key for Oklahoma going forward.
Two years ago, Oklahoma was in the college football playoff. Murray to the end zone. Knocked away at the last second, incomplete. There is a penalty flag down. Jeffrey Mead, the intended receiver. He had Kyle Mayberry in coverage.
Number 15, Jeffrey Mead, is a flag on the play.
And that's the second time a lineman for Oklahoma has been illegally downfield. It was the left tackle Orlando Brown earlier that negated a Baker Mayfield touchdown.
An eligible man downfield, number 58, offense, 5-yard penalty, still second down.
It's on the center, Eric Wren.
Now, I think this is the way you have to try to play against Oklahoma. This is what Iowa State was able to do. On offense, you have to have slow and methodical drives, time-consuming drives. Iowa State had 4 drives that all resulted in points that were 4 minutes and 29 seconds or longer. Basically, keep Baker Mayfield off the field. You have to score touchdowns in the red zone, too. Field goals will not get the job done. And when you're on defense, you have to make Baker Mayfield patient. Force him to play dink and dunk and rally to the football while still doing a good enough job up front with your front 4 to stop the run.
Murray's pass in the end zone, incomplete, knocked away at the last second. I think your point about making Baker Mayfield patient, dinking and dunking, people just assume that that's what he does. But again, we've showed the graphic a couple times that Oklahoma's about the deep ball.
Right.
The success of Mayfield is because he's able to throw it down the field. It'll be interesting. Can teams keep the ball underneath? Can it be the quick passing game?
And Dave, if you look at the first half of this game tonight, that was the recipe. He's held onto the ball, patted the ball. They weren't able to take their shots downfield and get many opportunities, and it was tough sledding for Oklahoma in the first half.
It was a 7-3 game, right? Early to mid part of the second quarter, and then Kansas had a bad turnover in its own end that led to an OU touchdown. Murray running around just takes a seat at the 13-yard line.
Once Baker Mayfield gets in rhythm, though, this is what you get in the second half.
Yep.
Once he starts to feel comfortable and has a good feel for what you're doing defensively and knows where his wide receivers are going to be, and Lincoln Riley can kind of evaluate how teams are going to attack them, it's amazing just how consistent he can become throwing the football. 13-17 in the second half with one drop, a throwaway, and a few other throws that were just barely off the mark. He has really dialed in during the final 30 minutes.
Seibert techs on 3 more to make it 41-3. Sooners with 4:39 on the clock. Let's check in with Adnan in the studio.
Thanks very much, Dave. Well, how about it? Oklahoma State making a game of it. Down 45-34. It's Mason Rudolph to Dylan Stoner. And two-point convert failed, but it's a 5-point game. 2 minutes left. We'll see how this one ends up. Keep it posted. That's on ESPN2. Coming up next year on ESPN, Danny Etling and LSU going to face Tennessee in Knoxville, just about 9 minutes away from game time. Dave, back to you and Greg.
And obviously, Brady Hoke is now the interim head coach at Tennessee, with Butch Jones being relieved of his duties. And a lot of discussion this week about who might be the next head coach at Tennessee.
Are you buying the groomers? John Gruden. Of course, his wife was a cheerleader there at Tennessee.
Well, I mean, people from Knoxville, Tennessee fans are everywhere. We have a couple in our booth, and we also have one in the stands. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about John Gruden and reports about that maybe Tennessee's got some concern about hiring somebody who hasn't coached in college in 2 decades. Bottom line is, whoever Tennessee hires, things have changed, and maybe they'll look back and appreciate Philip Fulmer a little bit more about what he was able to accomplish at Tennessee 15-20 years ago. Shadler across the 30-yard line. They still have all the resources, but the SEC West is so strong now.
Yeah, the
Georgia
SEC West is. The East, though, it can be a winnable division, and I think that's a big reason why Butch Jones is no longer the coach at Tennessee, because they never got over the hump. And you see Florida the last 2 years pressing the reset button with McElwain a few years ago. Of course, he's no longer there, but they were able to get to that mountaintop. Tennessee was not able to get there. It just further proves just how easy it is to take winning for granted. Philip Fulmer did a great job, and of course they've had instability over the last decade there in Knoxville.
Peyton Bender is in the game at quarterback for Kansas. Dom Williams, the ball carrier, a true freshman, picks up a couple of yards. Bender from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, started the first 7 games of the season for Kansas.
He's got a live arm. Watching him in warm-ups, he can throw it. Just didn't have the mobility that Stanley had, and behind an offensive line that really struggled to consistently protect the passer, they had to go with the more mobile option in Stanley. Said it wasn't really anything that Bender did. It's just right now, with what our offense has and the pieces that we have up front, we need a guy that can move around.
Little swing pass that's in the dirt on 2nd down, bringing up 3rd and long. All it takes at a place like Tennessee is if you can get a quarterback. And you look at Georgia's rise this year.
That's everywhere,
right?
Dave.
But I guess my point is the quarterback play in the SEC East has been bad for a long time.
Right.
When's the last time there's been a great quarterback? in the SEC East.
Aaron Murray, I mean, there haven't been a whole lot over the last few years, and that's a big reason why the West has won the SEC championship every year since 2008.
Williams on the carry. Picks up a couple. It's 4th down here. Kansas is trying to run out the clock.
No, that Tennessee job, fellas, it is a good job. And you're right, Dave, Greg, resources, facilities, conference affiliation, great fan base and alumni. The challenge is your in-state recruiting pool is challenging because you don't have sheer numbers. So what do you have to do? You got to go into everybody else's backyard and pluck them out of their states. And that's a challenging thing to do.
Here's the punt on 4th down. And boy, Lamb decides to field it for some reason. And a flag is thrown here as Lamb was tackled after the whistle. It appeared that either there was a face mask on the play or a little extracurricular activity after the whistle.
These officials have taken their time getting these rulings right the last few times that they've thrown a flag. Come on, fellas.
Yeah, we're on 3 hours and 40 minutes of game time now. Moore, number 20 for Kansas, may have grabbed the face mask.
Personal foul, face mask, number 20, kicking team. 15-yard penalty from the dead ball spot. 1st down.
Emmanuel Moore, guilty party, and that's going to put the ball near the 20-yard line for Oklahoma. So here is the current setup for the Power 5 championship games. We know it's Clemson, Miami in the ACC, and the winner of the Iron Bowl against Georgia in the SEC. Pac-12, Big 10, and Big 12 still up for grabs, but Oklahoma is definitely in the Big 12 championship game with its win today. Wisconsin is in the Big 10 title game.
I don't think I've ever seen a situation, of course, this is the inaugural Big 12 championship game. I don't think I've ever seen a situation where 5 teams are still not mathematically eliminated with just 2 games to go. That's pretty amazing. Half the league can still potentially get the championship game if the stars align.
Greg, the idea when they set up the Big 12 championship game was to avoid having a team left out of the college football playoff conversation, but ultimately in 2017 could have come back to haunt a Big 12 team by getting, if you're Oklahoma, let's say, or anybody, because nobody is undefeated in the conference anymore, that second loss in the Big 12 title game.
Well, that's the one thing, and with the round robin schedule that the Big 12 plays, it probably does present more opportunities for upsets, because playing a team for the second time is very difficult.
Murray throws it downfield here, and the pass is pulled in by Meade for a 1st down.
Pass is complete.
But I look at the way Oklahoma has played. Granted, you look at the game against Iowa State, didn't play well defensively at all, but I don't feel like that's who they are. The bigger the moment, the better the opposition, the better they seem to play, Tom, and I really do. I like their chances a lot of finishing the regular season at 11-1 and obviously winning the Big 12 championship game against likely TCU.
Well, and I'm with you. And you know, we've seen TCU up close and personal. We've seen Oklahoma State as a crew. I think this is the most complete team of the 3.
Here's Adams running. Keep going, Tom. Gain of about 8 yards there for Adams.
You know, listen, we always talk about, well, you know, this team has this player, or this team's really good in this area. And I think what we've also got to acknowledge and understand is it seems like it's a long season, but it's really a short season. You have few opportunities to make an impression, and it is difficult to win just one game. And when you get into the month of November, and I think we would all agree about everybody's injured, everybody's banged up, nobody's exclusive in that regard. And so are you healthy? Are you peaking at the right time? Do you have some things go your way? It's all part of the equation. Championship teams are all flawed in some way.
Well, and as you look at the top 4 teams, we just saw Alabama last week the Tide is not invincible. That was a game they could have lost, or at least could have had overtime if not for some questionable decisions to blitz Jalen Hurts in the last 2 plays. Alabama wins that game. They've got injuries at the linebacker spot. Mississippi State's offensive line was able to lean on them last week. That could really shake things up if Alabama's unable to knock off Auburn next week.
Yeah, injuries are just such a huge part of the game. And really, as you try to navigate throughout a national championship run, you got to have some luck. And you got to make sure that the right guys are in there and the right pieces are healthy and they're operating and playing at a high level. So there's a lot of things that go into it. And then the big factor now, too, is with the college football playoff format, which team gets better, which team improves from the final game in the conference championship until the first game, the semifinal.
That's a great point.
There's 30 days where you can potentially improve, and the team that improves the most is likely going to be crowned the national champion.
And which injured guys can get healthy? Maybe even players you haven't had since mid-September that have had major injuries that get that extra few weeks to get healthy for the college football playoff. Oklahoma's one step closer to reaching its goal by beating Kansas 41-3. The Sooners now 10-1 on the season. Coming up next on ESPN, college football scoreboard presented by Honda. This has been a presentation of ESPN. For Greg McElroy, Tom Luganbill, our entire crew, I'm Dave Pasch. So long from Lawrence. SEC football, LSU, Tennessee coming up. Oklahoma a winner, 41-3 over the Jayhawks.